Chapter 301. The frozen time and space resumed flowing. Sargeras and the professor, the only two people who could sense what had happened, fell into silence. Only the Avengers, who couldn't sense what had happened, were still surprised by Crow's sudden disappearance. "Is it him?" Sargeras said to the professor's consciousness in the void. "No. That's another terrible existence. He came to this world for a short while and left us some gift. But this proves my guess. Apocalypse is only a part of him. What we saw was only the tip of the iceberg." The professor's consciousness fluctuated strangely. The long river of fate is vast and mighty. Sometimes, even the Titans can't do it. Sargeras sighed. "Maybe one day, I'll return to the essence of destruction, just like how I was born from entropy. I'll be created by him and destroyed by him. Why should you obey the control of your instincts? Even the highly conceptual embodiment of entropy shouldn't only understand destruction and destruction. The fate of decay and destruction of all things can't be changed. I must end it." The red light in Sargeras's eye sockets burned brighter and brighter. Intense hatred and destruction burned in his eyes. "Mortal, don't use your thoughts to guess us. How can you peep into the thoughts of the Titans?" "I can." The professor's words rang in Sargeras's mind. "In the beginning, many people thought that my ability was very dangerous. But in fact, the real danger is not being controlled, and my power comes from self-control. Because of this, I have a power more powerful than telepathy: trust. It's easier to let go than to control, but few people want to know what the consequences of letting go are. Even if my ideals are within reach under the temptation of power, as long as I control the minds of humans, I can undoubtedly make the entire world run the way I want. But indulging this power will only be the opposite of what I want, because peace and love always come from the most human power, hope, and not thought control. I cherish this hard-won restraint, so I have this precious trust. Sargeras, son of hatred, Tian-Chi will burn your heart with an unquenchable flame of anger and hatred, making you suffer the pain of being disloyal to him for eternity, even if this disloyalty was created by him. The most powerful ability I have is not to control a person's mind, but to bear the pain of others. I will understand your pain. I will empathize with you, Sargeras. Open up your soul and let me in. I have no intention of peeping into your thoughts. I just want to bear the pain you are suffering with you. Trust me." The professor completely opened his mind and first established a one-sided communication. The powerful force twisted the boundary between reality and fantasy, folding the small space inside the giant ship tens of thousands of layers, becoming endless and vast. Everyone who could come into contact with the professor's heart could truly feel the pure love and sincerity in his heart. It was a kind of pure emotion that allowed people to bear the pain in their hearts together with him. Bruce returned to his Hulk form without any resistance, and he staggered towards the depths of the world, to let go of the anger in his heart. On the other hand, Sargeras's resistance grew stronger and stronger. He wantonly destroyed everything in front of him, as if he wanted to completely destroy the world. The endless army of destroyers was easily accommodated into this vast world, but no matter how crazily they vented, the professor could only bear it silently. After coming to this world, Tawny looked at his hands in surprise. Next to him, Rogers was a little worried. "What's wrong?" "Tawny, I feel like you seem to have found something." "I've been here." Tawny turned back and said, "Although I don't know why I have no memory, I know I've been here. It should be to relieve my mental pressure for treatment. I seem to have put something here." "What thing?" Rogers suddenly felt a little uneasy. "Pain and power. Or rather, it's the pain brought by power. The vitality of my nuclear cells has been low for a long time, and it can't even keep up with the reactor. It should be here that I sealed this terrible power, and I turned it into my fantasy. I turned the neutron star, the power of my nuclear cells, and my pain all into my fantasy. On the other side, Sargeras seemed to be struggling in a cage. He tried his best, but he was still accommodated by the professor's heart. That was how big the world was, as big as the heart, and Sargeras' power was far from the limits of the professor's heart. However, Sargeras's body was only carried by the Ultron's destroyer, and it was far from being able to exert his true power. This weakness was the creator of despair in front of the Avenger, but in front of a powerhouse of the same level as the Professor, it was a huge flaw. But this wasn't Sargeras's strongest side. He still had a soul and will as strong as the Professor's. His mental pollution ability was his strongest form now. But this was exactly what the Professor said was needed, to force Sargeras out of the duel of will, let Sargeras pollute his soul, and carry out the most fundamental duel of soul and will. If the Professor couldn't bear Sargeras' madness, hatred, and destruction, then he would become the most terrifying evil god Sargeras had created. If he could, then his heart would bear the pain that Sargeras was suffering, and bear the eternal torture that Chun-Ong gave Sargeras during the apocalypse together with him. Finally, Sargeras would be redeemed. Sargeras had no choice. His body was burning with blood-colored flames, and everywhere he went was extremely distorted. His extremely deformed spirit and emotions polluted everything. But this expanded filth was not worth mentioning to the Professor's endless spiritual kingdom. Sargeras roared angrily at the sky, "If you want to bear my anger, then bear my pain." As he spoke, he connected with the Professor's open mind, and the spiritual barrier between the two began to disappear. Sargeras could feel that the Professor had gone through hardships and finally returned to pure emotions. His love and hope, understanding and tolerance of all emotions. Professor was also able to deeply touch the darkest side of the universe. Tony Stark was on the verge of collapse with just one look. He felt all the negative emotions of destruction, death, and chaos. He experienced the most twisted and distorted thoughts and emotions in the universe. Professor Stark was also able to understand the darkness. Tony Stark was on the verge of collapsing. The anger of the extinguishing stars, the unwillingness of the death of intelligent creatures, the hatred of the dead planets, and the most distorted and darkest thoughts at the end of reality and fantasy. This darkness was so terrifying that even the Professor's endless and all-inclusive spiritual world couldn't bear it and almost collapsed. The countless layers of quiet and peaceful worlds entered dust. The great collapse, the great destruction, and the great disaster caused space to collapse, time to be chaotic, and all things to enter the end of life. Everything was destroyed like the end of the world. Sargeras laughed wildly in the center of the world. The extremely distorted dark power was wreaking havoc with him as the center. It seemed that the Professor couldn't bear it anymore. Tani, who was trembling under this power, finally remembered the fear of being dominated by Sargeras. That nightmarish situation made him go crazy and collapse. The neutron star has become my fantasy. Nuclear cells, fusion bodies, these things are now in my brain. Wait. In this world, there is no absolute boundary between reality and fantasy. So I have a key. It can take back my power. Tani suddenly raised his head, his eyes full of red veins. Rogers heard his heart and hurriedly pulled him back. Tani, trust the Professor. He can bear all this. No, Rogers, he can't. You haven't encountered that kind of darkness. No one can bear this kind of power. The Professor has gone too far. If I knew that he had such a crazy idea, I would definitely stop him. Tani roared. You don't know that kind of pain and despair. I want to stop all this. I might be able to stop Sargeras, as long as I can find my forgotten power. Tani looked at his hands. Blazing radiation exploded from his palms. The temperature of thousands of degrees was enough to melt gold and corrode iron. Tani suddenly looked at his body. The blood-red lines of nuclear cells slowly crawled over his chest and back. To be continued. Chapter 302. The neutron star armor covered Tani's body inch by inch. Its smooth curves were tightly fitted to his muscles. Its dark metallic luster and ferocious shape had a very strong Greek style. It exuded a thrilling sense of danger. Anyone who saw this armor would be shocked by its lethal shape. It was like an existence at the top of the food chain. It had a natural awe. Tawny's body had already become one with the armor. Once again, it switched from reality to fantasy. His original body had already become an illusion, and the real body he had forgotten, after he recalled the memories he had deliberately forgotten, grasped the key to retrieve his power. The powerful self-circulation gravitational system of the neutron star could form a world of its own even in the fantasy world. In this space that blurred reality and fantasy, this armor made from the remains of the neutron star had a body like that of the Titan giant god. Its huge size and power could open up a world with just a wave of its hand. Even the professor could not control the illusion realm of this armor because its existence could already tear the barrier between worlds. Tawny felt the huge power in his body. He tore the space angrily and tore Sargeras' shadow into pieces. The strong gravity made his hand tear everything around him like a black hole. In this fragile fantasy world, Tawny could create a huge crack in space and devour everything with just a little force. This was the power of gods and demons, the power of stars. With this kind of power, the destroyer could only be easily destroyed by the neutron star. The professor's fantasy world was under extreme pressure. Sargeras's body was like an ant in front of it, but Sargeras's face was filled with joy. He ignored the huge hand reaching for him and closed his eyes. Finally, Tawny Stark, I finally have it again. My body, the remains of the Titan star, my blood, my bones, my flesh. Rogers suddenly understood. He shouted at Stark, Tawny, stop! We've fallen into a trap. Sargeras isn't here to steal vibranium. He's looking for your forgotten neutron star of power. Only when the professor pulls you into this world with him will you have a chance to recall your power. That's his body, that's the body he's looking for. Quick, retrieve neutron star. Rogers anxiously searched for the professor's consciousness, but it was too late. Are you looking for Charles? He really wanted to help you. If it wasn't for you mortals, I would have been completely defeated by him. How could a human's heart have such great power? Charles is a mortal that even the Titans must pay respect to. He is able to tolerate that kind of pain and hatred, and he also has a spiritual power that I do not possess. But mortal, I am a Titan with the strongest body and power. Now, I have nothing to fear. Although Charles had endured my pain, such a powerful dark side made it difficult for him to make a move in a short period of time. No one can stop me. Sargeras's body was like a ball of molten flames, and he drilled into the Titan god's forehead. Although Tony, who was inside the neutron star armor, had already woken up, he had completely lost control of the armor. A familiar force came from all parts of the armor, from his nerves and into his brain. The burning pain made Tawny struggle frantically. His body suddenly heated up rapidly. In just a few minutes, the atoms that made up his body collapsed into protons and neutrons, and the chain reaction quickly pushed the core temperature of his body to a higher level. 15,000 degrees, 28,000 degrees, 120,000 degrees. The melted body cells and the neutron star armor fused tightly together. The huge darkness in the depths of Tawny's consciousness welcomed a dominating consciousness. Sargera's roar was released through the body of neutron star, tearing countless worlds apart. Rogers could feel the sound waves brushing past him, shattering half of the planet he was on. The melted nuclear cells ignited the neutron star, forming an active core, the heart of the neutron star with a temperature of millions of degrees. Sargera's consciousness spread along the nuclear cells, gradually penetrating the entire neutron star. The powerful energy activity and life force revived this withered corpse. Countless illusory worlds shattered, and matter was compressed into neutrons, filling the body of the Titan god. A huge power tens of thousands of times stronger than before engulfed the entire illusory world. A body as tall as a galaxy looked down on everything. The Avengers relied on the power left behind by the Professor, struggling to hold on in this huge disaster. And Sargera's power was still rising endlessly. No one knew where his limit was. Sargera's, who had regained his body, was more than 1,000,000,000 times stronger than before. Tawny's body had been completely eroded. Even his mass had been consumed in the process of awakening the neutron star. Only a bit of consciousness remained in Sargera's control. I've made a huge mistake. Tawny's consciousness sent out such incomplete waves in a daze. There's only darkness in front of me. Light, where are you? Suddenly, in the dark and heavy world of Sargera's consciousness, a white light cut through the darkness and appeared in front of Tawny. Stark used the last of his strength to reach out to it. Light enveloped him. A warm power wrapped around him, breaking through the darkness and returning to that broken, illusory world. Charles, you've wasted your last chance. Sargera's consciousness sighed. You've already broken through the darkness in my soul. Now, my astral soul and body haven't completely fused. With your spiritual power that defeated me, you still have a chance to separate my soul from my body, and then seal me completely. Why? Why did you give up this chance for an idiot who destroyed your hard work? You should know that if my soul and body fuse tightly, you'll completely lose the chance to defeat me. Do you know the power that can bear your endless pain? That's hope, the only thing worth pursuing. For the sake of hope, it's not a pity to give up everything. Sargeras, give up the pain in your heart. I hope you can regain the Titan's love for all things, regain hope. The Professor's voice resounded in Sargeras's dark heart. In the abyss of darkness there was a little light. But this little light was swallowed up in the blink of an eye, and the abyss returned to darkness. Then let me destroy all of you! Sargeras roared. The Titan's huge body tore the boundary between reality and illusion, and broke free from reality. The huge Titan rushed out of the giant ship. His body was thousands of meters tall, and the seawater could only submerge his calves. He stood in the West Sea of the Indian Ocean, and people on the east coast of Africa and the Red Sea could see him. The Africans worshipped the giant in the sea in fear. The Avengers stood under his feet like ants. The Titan's power could tear them apart with just one breath. And even the Professor couldn't reverse such an attack until the essence of their souls. The Professor might be able to resurrect the Avengers when he was in full power, but now that the illusory world was broken, the Professor with his weakened spiritual power could no longer save them. P.S. I just saw a book friend called, "Are you willing to add chapters for me?" Be willful for once, add chapters for him. To be continued. Chapter 303. I will conquer this planet. Luonan looked down at Earth, which was just inches away from him. The closer he looked at this aqua-blue planet from outer space, the more he found it to be astonishingly beautiful. The warship floated in the air above the waters near the eastern coast of Africa. There was a piece of land exposed to the dry seabed in the middle of the azure sea below. A giant ship was stranded on the surface. Luonan pointed at the area and ordered, "Let's land there. I want to turn this place into our colony. Tila Star should be gloriously under the rule of the Empire. The natives don't deserve to enjoy this beautiful planet." Luonan caressed the Earth through the viewing window. He turned to Korit and said, "We're going to give it a new name. The Tellans are about to die out. This planet shouldn't have any traces of their filth left behind. In the universe, only power is the truth. The weak Tellans shouldn't even have a name under my rule. How can these bug-like Tellans be worthy of possessing a treasure like the Infinity Gem? Wait until I obtain it and resist the invading armies of Earth. I want to build my palace here and control this starfield for me, including the nearby Asgardians." Luonan clenched his fists tightly. He turned to roar at his soldiers, "Prepare to land. Then, destroy the Tellans' resistance for me. Tell them that if they don't hand over the Infinity Gem, Then I'll kill them all. Luonan personally donned his battle armor and watched the ship approach the ground bit by bit. He suddenly discovered a young Talon standing on the giant ship below the ship. The young Talon sized up this majestic ship with curiosity. The seawater swarmed toward the dry land in the middle. But the strange thing was that the giant waves swirled around the giant ship. They didn't topple over and tear the giant ship to pieces. The heavy pressure brought by the ship's anti-gravity system caused the seawater to recede once more. Luonan looked at the young Talon, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. If Luonan's ship hadn't been in orbit on the far side of the moon 5 minutes ago, they would have been able to see this young native wave his hand and sprinkle out a galaxy, obliterating the surrounding 2,000 kilometers. Perhaps they would have dispelled their laughable desire to conquer this planet. But they didn't. Fate was unpredictable. Sometimes, its lack of care would bring about disastrous consequences. Chen Ong looked at the 2 Kree soldiers in front of him in shock. After they spoke in Kree, they wanted to drag Chen Ong into the spaceship. Of course, Chen Ong did not understand Kree, and the 2 Kree soldiers did not care if Chen Ong understood. Who would care about what a native monkey said? Chen Ong pressed down on the head of the Kree soldier who was trying to grab his arm. He flipped through their memories and learned their language. "Let go of my head, Terra." "Terra?" Chen Ong turned around and looked around. Then, he pointed at his own nose and asked, "Are you talking about me?" The Kree soldier punched Chen Ong in the stomach and shouted, "You actually know how to speak Kree, native. Looks like we caught a valuable Terra trash." Before his fist could touch Chen Ang's body, it was grabbed by Chen Ang's hand. "It's very rude to name another race. I dare say your civilization will regret this for at least 10,000 years. Chen Ong crushed the bones in his palm. Ignoring the Kree soldier's crazed cries, he whispered in his ear, "Do you know how terrifying this place is? As the first Kree I've met, I have to tell you a piece of unfortunate news. Welcome to the graveyard of civilization, the experimental field of the apocalypse, the origin of all nightmares in the universe. This is Earth." Then, Chen Ong gave him a special welcome from Earth. A force of 100,000 magnetic fields hit him head-on. The strong magnetic force turned the Kree soldier into atoms. With great inertia, he crashed heavily into the spaceship behind him. A huge gap was opened in front of them. "I'm from Earth." Chen Ong sighed. "Extraterrestrial invaders who haven't learned their language well, do you understand the meaning of this word? The planet I'm standing on has been invaded by countless alien races in billions of parallel worlds. N times N equals to positive infinity. Even if it's just the Earth of this world, the number of dead alien corpses here can circle the Milky Way 3 times. The existence born here is the most terrifying disaster in the universe." Ignoring the other Kree soldier, who was clearly scared silly, Chen Ong walked toward the spaceship that was paralyzed on the surface of the sea. He followed the path his fists had cleared and easily arrived at the Kree battleship. Luonan was in the middle of searching for information on this planet when he heard a loud noise come from the outer shell of the warship. Intense vibrations came from beneath his feet, and the terrifying force of the impact nearly split the warship in 2. Countless fragments of armor and damaged parts shot out in all directions, paralyzing the entire warship's power system. Luonan rushed toward the damaged area of the battleship. "What's going on? Who are we under attack?" "Korath." A vague voice came from the communication device in his ear. "Attila is rushing over. I'm going to stop him. Buzz. This place is dangerous. Buzz. They're all dead. Leave. Leave. Leave." There was a long blank time in the communication device. Just as Luonan came to the gap, Karatha's last words came. "It's too late. A bunch of trash. Where is the enemy?" Luonan opened the door to the string bridge and shouted angrily. But he soon stopped because he saw the Tila native who had just stood on the giant ship standing in the passage and looking back at him. At Chen Ang's feet, there were Kree corpses one after another, evenly extending from the end of the passage to the door. These soldiers' expressions were horrified, but there was no trace of other injuries except for the fatal wounds. Even the way they fell was very neat. Looking at the situation, they were almost slaughtered without any resistance. "Luo Nan?" Chenong asked. "Who are you? Did Star-Lord tell you my name?" Luo Nan, the accuser, looked at this inconspicuous Tila and instinctively responded with caution. He glanced at the corpses on the ground and seemed to understand something. He sneered. "You stole the power of my gems? Stupid Tila! Do you think that by relying on these gems, you can have the power to resist me?" Chen Ong did not answer his words. Instead, he asked, "Didn't you see what happened here 7 minutes ago? There is nothing worth my attention on this planet." Luo Nan sneered disdainfully. To be continued. Chapter 304. Good. Chen Ong raised his thumb and praised, "Very good. I appreciate your confidence. There are always some people that I don't understand in the Tila people. Star-Lord is like this, and you are also like this. Native, your vision is narrow, and you don't understand the vastness of this world. Can you only put that little thing in your eyes?" Luo Nan made a gesture to show that he was small. "If you know me and know everything I have done, will you still have such courage? You mean the planet you have destroyed?" Chenong was surprised. He said thoughtfully, "It seems that your old enemy, the planet of the Xander people, only has a population of 10 million. The number of people who die on our planet in a year is more than that. It seems that this is not something to be proud of." Chen Ong shrugged and said, "But I know who has the gemstone you want. They are very difficult to deal with. If you go like this, you will die. Do you know?" Looking at Luo Nan's disdainful eyes, Chen Ong emphasized again, "If you dare to provoke them, you will die a very ugly death. Don't say that I didn't warn you." Luo Nan picked up his scepter and walked towards Chen Ong step by step. The heavy scepter head was light and easy in his hand, and it could turn into a killing weapon at any time. "I will remember you, Terran, you sharp-tongued little thing." Luo Nan brandished his scepter. The remnant power of the power gem within his body increased his strength. The scepter brought a fierce gale as it chopped down fiercely, smashing towards Chen Ang's head. Dang! A muffled sound was heard, and the huge sound was muffled in a soft place, so that the loud sound only made a little echo. Luo Nan's scepter was held in Chen Ang's hand, and it was like it was rooted. No matter how much strength he exerted, he couldn't lift it. "Want to kill me? I forgot to tell you." Chen Ang's voice became a little low. "Even if you provoke dragons and tigers, you shouldn't provoke me. Now no one can save you. You bastard, today I want you to die miserably, miserably, miserably." The magnetic field around Chen Ong condensed into an indestructible force. Luo Nan suddenly felt that the Tila person in front of him seemed to be integrated with the planet under his feet. He grabbed the scepter and lifted Luo Nan upside down. The powerful force of the planet's rotation defeated Luo Nan's resistance with unparalleled momentum, lifting him up like a chicken. The power of the magnetic field acted on Chen Ang's body. Every movement of the titanium body brought with it a terrifying gravitational force. Luo Nan felt the pressure, but he still said indifferently, "Native, dirt my ass." Chen Ong swung his scepter and fiercely smashed Luo Nan against the wall. The enormous force caused the alloy wall to distort. Luo Nan's internal organs were about to be jolted out from Chen Ang's smashing. Luo Nan roared in a daze, "You dare!" Chen Ong grabbed one of Luo Nan's feet and smashed him to the wall. The huge force caused the alloy wall to distort. Luo Nan's internal organs were about to spill out from the smashing. He roared in a daze, "You dare, Luo Nan! You're just an alien monkey. Just a mere extraterrestrial monkey. Call me a native." Chen Ong lifted Luo Nan upside down and shouted, "Back in the day, when I beat up the entire universe, the Kree people were still single-celled." He smashed Luonan against the wall once more after speaking. This time, Chen-Ong purposely let Luonan's face hit the ground. No one dares to talk to me like this in my territory. You're the first. Back in the day, my #1 general led the 4 commanders to hack from the material universe to the virtual space, and from the virtual space to the world of death. 4 of the 5 gods were nearly hacked to death, and he was the only survivor of the annihilation of the entire race. Isn't he awesome? I don't know how much stronger he is compared to you. I can talk and laugh with him. The angry Chen-Ong dragged Luonan all the way forward. Luonan's face was wiped on the ground and a trail of blue blood was wiped out. Luonan was a little sober on the way, and was violently smashed to the ground by Chen-Ong. Chen-Ong carried Luonan's scepter in one hand and dragged Luonan's hind leg with the other. Wherever he went, the Kree people who dared to rush up were smashed by him. Yondu whistled and controlled the whistle arrow in the air to open the door of his imprisonment. After opening the door of his men's cell one by one, he looked out in doubt. Star-Lord, that kid has caused a lot of trouble for me. Luonan heard that I know the coordinates of Terrastar, so he tied me up and brought me here. Yondu scratched his head. I don't know how many people can survive on Terrastar. Star-Lord has really ruined his homeworld this time. What was that loud noise just now? Yondu pointed to the empty guard position and asked, Where did Luonan's men go? I saw them all withdraw. It seems to be to resist the invasion of foreign enemies. A scavenger explained. Someone dares to invade Luonan's battleship? Yondu touched his head, but I checked the coordinates. We should be on Terrastar right now? What happened? A group of scavengers rushed out of the cage under the leadership of Yondu and rushed towards other positions of the spaceship. Just when they thought they could successfully muddle through, a female robot stopped them. She stepped on her spring-like hind feet and stopped in front of the scavengers with a double blade in her hand, looking at them with a sneer. Nebula, you shouldn't have stopped us. Yondu waved his hand and said, Now that you are under attack, you should go and support Luonan. Luonan doesn't need my support, but you. Luonan didn't say that he would let you go, so you should stay obediently. Nebula said with a cruel smile. At this time, the sound of fighting nearby suddenly became smaller and soon calmed down. Nebula smiled proudly and said, You see, Luonan won't take long. Yondu opened his mouth wide, and his face was filled with an expression of extreme horror. This must have taken all of his acting skills to make such an expression that was a mixture of panic, disbelief, unimaginable fear, and self-denial. Nebula could even notice that he was trembling all over. Yondu pointed behind Nebula, his mouth wide open, but he could not speak. You want to trick me into looking back? Nebula sneered. She looked at the scavengers who seemed to be possessed by the Oscars. Their eyes were wide open and their faces were full of disbelief. Their rich expressions and three-dimensional performances made Nebula almost believe it. But I won't be fooled, Nebula said as she quickly glanced behind her. She only saw a vague shadow that seemed to be a person dragging something heavy. Nebula stared at Yondu and whispered, What's behind me? Behind Nebula was a horizontal passage, and she was standing at the intersection of the cross passage. Yondu opened his mouth with difficulty and whispered in a trembling voice, Don't look back. Are you serious? Nebula couldn't hold back her doubts and asked. Yondu and all the scavengers behind him nodded their heads in unison, their expressions determined. Nebula could only stand there stiffly until she saw 2 blurry silhouettes reflected on the ground in front of her. One was a human figure that was paralyzed on the ground, and the other was being dragged on the ground by a figure that was not very tall. The figure was also carrying something that looked very much like Luonan's scepter. Nebula didn't dare to imagine it. She stood there quietly, like a robot that had really broken down. She even cut off her nerves and let her body stiffen naturally. When the shadow was far away, she heard Yondu, the scavenger opposite her, squeeze out a name with his teeth. Apocalypse. No. It's the Creator. It's the Creator. The Creator who created the apocalypse, the master of the four horsemen, is almost exactly the same as his statue. When I was excavating the ruins on Terrastar, I saw traces of the apocalypse. In the murals of the previous civilization, Atlantis, they inscribed the statue of the Creator who created the apocalypse and gave his name to it. Yondu was shaking like a sieve, and the scavengers behind him were also scared out of their wit. The apocalypse really looks like him. You should be very familiar with that face. Yondu stared at Nebula and said, "Didn't the Thanos carve the scene of the apocalypse destroying the Titans in the temple? If you see him, you will definitely recognize that face that looks like the apocalypse. There is no doubt that that is his father." "I don't know." Nebula was almost scared to tears. She suddenly said, "I just saw a vague shadow, and my subconscious drove me to turn my head. Oh my God! Is this universe going to end?" To be continued. Chapter 305. Nebula and the others felt Chen-Ong dragging Luonan, who was like a dead dog, away whistling. Only then did they dare to relax. At this moment, they didn't care about any disputes. They just wanted to leave this terrible place as soon as possible. Yondu took the scavengers and fled quickly, and Nebula was still running in front of them. Yondu looked at the woman who ran as fast as a rabbit and couldn't help but shout at her, "Hey! Aren't you going to save Luonan? You know, without this spaceship, we can't leave Terra Star anymore. Terra's own spaceship can only sail within the planetary system." Nebula turned to him and said, "I never pay for other people's stupidity. If Luonan dies, it's no big deal to change the boss. But if you leave like this, you'll have to stay with him on the same planet for the rest of your life." Yondu's words hit Nebula's soft spot at once. Seeing that his words had an effect, he quickly added, "Terra Star is a backward planet. You can't leave this galaxy. Do you want to live in this shadow forever? Do you want to do that?" Nebula said with a gloomy face. Yondu cracked his mouth and said, "Cooperation. I know where the parking space of the dead spaceship is." Nebula immediately understood Yondu's meaning. "And I know the route to leave Terra Star, especially the route suitable for this kind of small spaceship. Without me, even if you get the spaceship, it will only crash in the universe." Yondu also had something to rely on. But cooperation is not limited to this. Yondu smiled and said, "This is just a necessary condition for our cooperation, the basis of our mutual trust. Because only by cooperating can we leave here. I have controlled 2 dead spaceships to land in the nearby sea. What do you want to cooperate with?" Nebula was also very interested in this. Yondu smiled mysteriously, "I want to do the biggest job in history. Don't you also want to gain power? Nebula, you have a very strong ambition. Our goal is the same. I know a lot of rich people who are interested in power. They have wealth that you can't even imagine." Nebula added, "What is Luonan looking for on this remote planet?" Yondu stared at Nebula and said greedily, "Is it a power gem?" "Not only that. There were also mind gems, spatial gems, reality gems, and soul gems. There are 5 of the 6 gems here. Each of them possesses unimaginable power and is one of the most precious treasures in the universe. And I heard that the glove that can control these 6 gems is also here." The greed in Yondu's eyes was almost uncontrollable, and he asked in a low voice, "Where are they? Who has it?" "How would I know?" Nebula was surprised. "I just arrived on this planet. If we knew this planet like the back of our hand, would we need to kidnap you to get your coordinates? Would Luonan encounter that terrifying existence again? How would I know that this planet is so dangerous? We just got some information through the Asgardians' spies." Just as Nebula was about to turn hostile, a voice came from behind them. "I know." Behind the 2 of them was the direction of the other scavengers. Yondu and Nebula turned their heads and looked behind them. The 2 scavengers at the front shook their heads quickly. "I didn't say that. It wasn't me either. It seems to be coming from behind." The scavengers turned their heads one by one and opened up a path to the back. More than a dozen scavengers slowly opened up a path, revealing the figure of the person who spoke behind them. He was carrying a hammer-headed scepter and dragging a person in his hand. Chen-ong repeated, "I know who has the 5 gems." Yandu and the others were stunned for a moment. Suddenly, Yandu let out a strange cry and fiercely pushed Nebula behind him, and he quickly fled forward. He even threw a trap rope to prevent the people behind him from catching up. In just a moment, he had escaped so far that even his shadow could not be seen. Fucking old rabbit. Cowardly bastard, old bitch. The scavengers who were left behind by Yandu burst into extremely obscene insults in the face of the trap rope that blocked their retreat. Their obscenities poured onto Yandu's head like a tide. Soon, in their mouths, Yandu's mother had relations with dozens of the most disgusting animals in the galaxy. Nebula almost collapsed. She did not even dare to breathe in front of Chen-ong. She was tamed like a harmless rabbit. Chen-eng's eyes calmly swept across the people present. In an instant, all the obscenities disappeared. The scavengers obediently put their hands on their heads and crawled in front of Chen-ong whistling. The whistling sound spread far in the quiet spaceship. Luonan's body was still trembling slightly. It was unknown whether he was not dead yet, or was he still alive. The squatting scavengers quietly used the corner of their eyes to observe Luonan, who was like a rotten piece of meat under Chen-eng's feet, trying to see what state the overlord of the universe was in. They still remembered Luonan's awe-inspiring reputation as the slaughterer of the Milky Way galaxy. This traditional Kree person was cruel and ruthless. He used fear and cruelty to rule over the vast star field. He had a powerful army and had set off several bloody wars in the Milky Way galaxy. Many families among the scavengers had been destroyed by Luonan's hands. Seeing his current appearance, they did not know whether to feel relieved or afraid. After all, if Luonan was a terrorist of the Milky Way galaxy, then the reputation of the apocalypse in the universe was probably equivalent to the devil: disaster, death, blood, panic, destruction, and a series of complex adjectives that had nothing to do with positive words. Although Chen-ong seemed to be in a good mood and was whistling, no one was sure that he would not immediately turn hostile and slaughter everyone here. Just when Nebula was at a loss of what to do and the scavengers were trembling in fear, a figure came over from the way Yandu left. The scavengers were so excited that they almost shouted out. Fortunately, they immediately remembered who the person standing behind them was and immediately shut their mouths obediently. They saw Yandu spread out his hands and step by step walk towards Chen-ong. "Boss, you really didn't give up on us." The scavengers were so moved that they wanted to cry. But they soon found that Yandu's face was very unnatural, and his smile was very stiff in the face of their excited expressions. It was not until they saw Yaka's arrow floating behind Yandu that they suddenly realized. Yaka's arrow was pointed at Yandu's back, and with the rhythm of Chen-eng's whistle, it forced him over little by little. Yandu did not understand that this kind of sound-controlled alloy weapon should only listen to his orders, but Chen-ong just whistled and the arrow became excited, as if it had been injected with chicken blood, completely out of control, making him have no choice but to turn back obediently. To be continued. Chapter 306. You want Infinity Stones? Chen-ong looked at these people and asked Yandu. Novels. Coincidentally, I'm also a little interested in these gems. I know where they are. I had to say, the Asgardians had really hidden them in a good place. Even I felt that it was a little tricky. The most frustrating thing was that I didn't know to what extent they had been developed. The Rubik's Cube is at most an unlimited energy source in your hands. Or a door key. Chen-ong gave an example. But it's very troublesome in the hands of Thanos, because he can use the gem's power more efficiently. The power of gems no longer comes from themselves. They have become a carrier, a special material that is used by people. A piece of steel can be used to smash people, or it can be forged into sharp cold weapons, or it can be used to make firearms or even nuclear bombs. Now, the gemstone is that piece of steel. You will never know what kind of abnormal existence it will become. Who has the gem? Yandu swallowed his saliva and asked in a low voice. Chen-Ong looked as if he did not care at all. They are all primitive civilizations on this planet, but a few thousand years of civilization is not worth mentioning. It was not worth mentioning. As far as I know, the universe Rubik's Cube that carries the space gem is in the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the mind gem has become the thinking core of an intelligent life called Illusion, which belongs to a coalition of countries called the Human Revolutionary Alliance. S.H.I.E.L.D. is an agent organization of a country called the United States of America, and the country that Illusion belongs to, China, has the remaining 4 gems. Unfortunately, except for the one on Illusion's head, I don't know the whereabouts of the other 3. Nebula shrank his head and shivered. He said in a low voice, "You want us to steal gems for you? But isn't it easy for you to obtain the Infinity Gem on this primitive Terra planet?" No, no, no. Chen-Ong held on stubbornly, refusing to admit that he was no match for the Republic, not even the Illusion. Instead, he emphasized, "This is a deal. You infiltrated my spaceship and were captured by me. If you want me to release you, you have to make a deal with me." Nebula was stunned. "But this is our spaceship. In other words, you are in cahoots with the Kree people who invaded my planet?" Chen-Eng's murderous intent was revealed. His hand had already touched Luonan's scepter. "We took the liberty of breaking into your spaceship." Yandu decisively admitted his mistake. "Very good." Chen-Ong tapped lightly. An array of silver light penetrated under the skin of Yandu and the others, and most of the silver light penetrated into the Yaka arrow suspended in midair, completely changing the structure of the copper arrow. The vibrometal alloy combined with the sound-activated metal, using a very complicated metal crystal to reconstruct the Yaka arrow. The dense metal structure had boundless lethality. The sensitivity of vibranium to receive vibrations, coupled with the magical alloy that can be controlled by sound, makes the lethality of this arrow exponentially increase. Originally, Yandu still needed to use sound to control the rhythm and action of Yaka arrow, but now this arrow can sensitively lock on to the infrasound waves emitted by Yandu's heart and other organs. Now that it has memorized the fluctuations of your body, it will automatically follow you. Chen-Ong said to Yandu, "You can command it as usual, and its lethality will only be more terrifying. Now, it only needs a small call, and it can erupt with a powerful force." As Chen-Ong spoke in a low voice, Yaka's arrow trembled and shot out. It pierced through the gaps in the spaceships and pierced back and forth in the sky. Every time it pierced through, it killed a Kree who tried to escape in the undead spaceship. The escaping spaceships fell from the sky like dumplings, causing everyone present to shudder. It is sensitive, it can come into contact with the slightest vibration of the universe, and it can perceive the fluctuations of the entire galaxy. I shouted in the third arm, and it could feel it in the silver heart. This is because its perception of fluctuations is superimposed. It is also powerful, composed of one of the most powerful materials in the universe, and it is almost indestructible. Now that it has memorized your fluctuations, if you do your best to complete the transaction, it will be your best assistant, if not, it will be your life killer. With Chen-Eng's reminder, Yaka's arrow circled around the necks of Yandu, Nebula, and others. Feeling the sharp coldness, Yandu and Nebula nodded in agreement like a worm. Chen-Ong smiled with satisfaction and said, "Now, it is your captain. Come, meet your captain Yaka." Yandu honestly met the Yaka arrow floating in the air and said, "I know someone who may be able to help us get the gem, and he happens to owe me something. Maybe we can go to him first. Star-Lord can indeed come into contact with a gem." Chen-Ong sighed. "This may be the only infinity stone you can possibly get. Yaka, it's up to you." The Yaka arrow in midair nodded its arrowhead and trembled twice solemnly. "You take your mount to see Star-Lord, they will find where the cosmic magic cube is," Chen Ong instructed patiently, but his words made Yandu roll his eyes next to him, and he cursed in his heart. Who is he talking to? Why do I feel like it's not me? Then Yandu saw the Yaka arrow turn his head and get into his harness, and finally understood who the mount was. Although Chen Ong was standing in the spaceship, on the outer shell of the spaceship that Yandu and Nebula couldn't see, countless black liquid metal was tumbling, repairing the spaceship's wounds, and a large number of metal elements were extracted from the seabed and filled into the spaceship. At the same time, Chen Ong was still paying attention to the changes in the giant ship under his feet. Originally, he could feel the powerful psychic power that enveloped this giant ship. It was the professor's psychic power, which almost distorted the space, creating a mezzanine world between fantasy and reality. There was a huge chaotic aura in it, and Chen Ong knew that it should be Sargeras' aura. But this aura had been weakening before, until he called the professor to fuse with him. It had been firmly suppressing Sargeras' aura. But at a certain moment before the fusion, Sargeras' aura suddenly skyrocketed, and it had begun to exceed the professor's bearing limit. At that time, Chen Ong knew that Sargeras was about to come out. Unexpectedly, the professor distorted the time in the spectral world, forcibly delaying the short moment in the fantasy world to a relatively long period of time in the real world. Feeling the aura in the giant ship getting more and more violent, Chen Ong waved his hand to Yandu. "You'd better set off quickly, I'm afraid you'll all die here." Chapter 307. Although Chen Ong had a deep enough understanding of Titan, this species was not created by Adam after all, so there were still some errors in his understanding of neutron star life. In Chen Ang's original understanding, due to the Pauli exclusion principle prohibiting different constituent particles from occupying the same quantum state, matter in the particle state cannot exist in the form of a superposition state. Then, in the high-density state of matter, the degeneracy state, there must be extremely terrifying pressure between the particles, which is the degeneracy pressure. When the mass of a star is greater than 14 times the mass of the Sun, the Chandrasekhar limit, the electron degeneracy pressure can no longer resist its own gravity, and the star will further collapse. The electrons will be forced into the nucleus and combined with protons to form neutrons. When the density of neutrons exceeds a certain level, they will enter the neutron degeneracy state. And Titan was the life that controlled the degeneracy state. Its body size should be about a spherical volume with a diameter of about 10 kilometers, and the density of each cubic centimeter of mass is about 100 million tons. The temperature generated on the surface of Titan's body is about 10 million degrees Celsius, and the magnetic field strength it may carry is enough to make Chen Ang's magnetic force helpless. If Tani really courted death and used the complete remains of a neutron star to build his battle armor, then the existence of this power alone would be enough to destroy the entire solar system. But now the situation was worse than imagined. Neutron star tri-state battle body. This is trying to kill me. Chen Ong gritted his teeth as he looked at the giant ship. The trace of gravitational waves revealed inside made his face pale. Yandu was a little curious and wanted to test it out. After all, although the legend of the apocalypse was terrible, he didn't feel how cruel and powerful Chen Ong was except for Luonan, who was beaten like a dead dog. This seemed to be different from the legend. Although there were not many powerful existences in the universe that could beat Luonan, there were still quite a few. If Chen Ong was only at that level, then they had more choices. After all, this kind of power was still terrible for them, but compared to Thanos, it was hard to say who was stronger and who was weaker. Yandu asked cautiously, "Master, what is this power that makes you not have the confidence to protect us? This kind of power should not exist on this primitive planet." As if worried that he had said the wrong thing, he added, "I am not saying that, Master, your power is not great enough, but I am worried that it will affect our search for gems." "What power?" "Heh." As if seeing through his thoughts, Chen Ong sneered, fusing Death Stars as armor, wielding gamma-ray storms as robes, using neutrino waves as scarves, and wearing supernova storms as cloaks. How much do you understand about this power? You know nothing about this power. The Death Star refers to the Titan's core, the neutron star core. It represents the neutron degenerate state of the neutron star, which is also the stable state of high-energy matter. The gravitational pressure and degenerate pressure are equal. The matter that forms the Titan's body is stable, allowing them to exert unimaginable power. This is the strongest power that you can imagine in the material world. The supernova storm is another of the 3 neutron star states, which is the fusion state or decay state. It refers to the state in which protons and electrons undergo electron capture reactions in the supernova explosion, and protons and electrons fuse into neutrons. It also refers to the neutron degenerate state matter that loses gravity and explodes to form free neutrons. The free neutrons then decay back into protons and electrons. It is the moving state of Titan and has the powerful energy to erupt a gamma-ray storm. Chen-Ong sneered, "It only needs one look to crush you. Yondu and Nebula really can't understand this power. After all, for them, neutron stars are just a special kind of celestial body and almost no one can see it. They can even imagine how terrifying this kind of celestial body would be if it had consciousness. After all, they lack an intuitive feeling." Only Chen-Ang's last sentence made them a little uneasy. "It can kill us with just a look?" Nebula was a little indignant. Chen-Ong glanced at them and said, "Not kill, but crush you like bugs. I don't think you can leave a whole body under the bombardment of neutrino waves. By the way, I forgot to tell you, this Titan is a pulsed neutron star. Its eyes are pulsed waves, whether it is radiation, photons, or electromagnetic waves, it can crush you 100 times. The reason why I emphasize neutrino waves is to prevent you from having delusions beyond your own abilities. Even if you are 10,000 times stronger, you will still be crushed by neutrino waves." Imagining the scene, Chen-Ong said in his mind, Yondu and others couldn't help but shudder. "There are so many perverts on this planet. Which bastard told me that Terrastar is just a primitive planet?" Nebula was aggrieved and frightened. She stared at Yondu and others fiercely and lowered her voice and asked, "This is the backward, primitive planet you said? What did you find on this planet?" "I don't know. When I brought Star-Lord back from Terrastar, the humans here had just landed on the moon, and they couldn't even find us. I found some ruins here, but they have been abandoned for a long time. I didn't know it was so dangerous here." Yondu felt very innocent. Nebula asked, "Are you sure? The Terra civilization is not out of the norm, so this kind of problem won't happen again." "No." Yondu patted his chest and said, "They don't have the slightest resistance." Chen-Ong, who was next to him, smiled sinisterly, and no one knew what he was thinking. When the surrounding space became more and more strange, the professor's psychic power could not control the overflow, distorting the surrounding void into a strange state, and Yondu and Nebula really felt that something was wrong. They saw with their own eyes that some changes had occurred in the surrounding scavengers, and some redundant organs representing power, even spirit, and bloodline symbols appeared on those scavengers. Chen-Ong explained, "This is psychic image transformation. Now there are some changes in this space, so that the spiritual level that you originally could not affect the reality is reflected in reality." Chen-Ong drew a circle of about a few dozen kilometers outward and said, "In order to prevent Titan from destroying this planet, someone projected their spirit into this space, making this place in a relatively isolated state. In layman's terms, we are in someone's dream, but his dream includes the whole world." Looking at her reappearing fleshly body, Nebula asked in a trembling voice, "Whose dream is it?" The apocalypse. Nebula and Yondu froze for a moment, and it was not until Chen-Ong spoke again that they came back to their senses and looked at the changing environment around them with fear. Chen-Ong smiled slightly and said, "Now you can't leave even if you want to. Stand far away, maybe you still have a chance to survive. Watching the space where the giant ship was expanding little by little, a powerful aura leaked out from the cracks that appeared from time to time in the surrounding void, oppressing the surrounding space to the point that it almost collapsed. Traces of golden flames seeped out of the cracks, from time to time on the edges of the cracks. Looking at the pure power without any impurities, Yondu and others couldn't help but feel instinctive fear and despair in their hearts. Suddenly, a gap the width of a person split open in the middle of the cabin, and several figures fled out of the gap. The leader was dragging a body and holding a round shield with star stripes on it. He looked back anxiously. The rest of them were also injured. It was as if they were being chased by an ancient monster. They only hated that they couldn't escape fast enough. Yondu and Nebula huddled in a hidden corner of the cabin, and Chen Ong didn't even look at them. He stepped out of the spaceship, holding a long sword upside down, and a trace of vast, desolate aura suddenly emerged from his body. The surrounding magnetic field fluctuated violently, and a trace of lightning drilled out of the void and stuck to Chen Ang's feet. Across the space, a giant with a height of thousands of meters and Chen Ong looked at each other silently, and the fighting spirit in their eyes almost burst out. In midair, a magnetic particle condensed to the extreme, and the magnetic field of the entire solar system rubbed against each other, and tens of billions of powerful electric energy brewed between them. Violent and countless lightning brushed past Chen Ang's body, turning this space into a thunder hell. Powerful neutrino waves rushed towards Chen Ong, but were silently dissolved by the resonance field that enveloped him and connected the entire universe, the Milky Way, and the Earth. Chapter 308. Darkness, Mysteriousness, Loneliness, Hatred. A powerful and deep and lonely aura enveloped this space. The dark golden titan's giant foot broke through the air and went straight into the world. The powerful gravity system meant that the giant foot did not need to borrow strength from the Earth at all, because the foot itself was a gravitational source that was heavier and more stable than the Earth itself. The seawater and rocks around it were all peeled off the ground and floated towards the Titan. More matter stuck to its body, but the closer it got, the more its own atomic structure was destroyed, and the powerful energy was released and integrated into the Titan's body. This huge gravitational tide, even Yondu and others hiding in the spaceship felt a huge pulling force at the moment when the gravitational tide peeled off the matter. If it weren't for the apocalypse billions of miles away, distorting this space, as soon as the Titan stomped its foot, the Earth would have been sucked away by the Titan's body like a huge sandball, and the powerful gravitational force would have destroyed all the physical structure of the planet in 1/10 of a second. Yondu, who was huddled with the scavengers, tried his best to stabilize his body and asked in a trembling voice, "It is said that this is a Titan? Is Thanos so terrifying?" "No." Nebula looked numbly at the giant foot in front of him, feeling the powerful force enveloping this space, and replied blankly, "Thanos is like a child in front of such power." Rogers couldn't help but sigh as he watched Chen Ong float steadily in midair, his aura comparable to that of the Titan god. Is this Atom's true strength? Is there really any meaning to the existence of the Avengers? How many times have we been as powerless as we are now? The apocalypse is playing with us like everything else, but we are powerless to resist. Bruce clicked his tongue. What kind of monster did Tawny release? I know a little about it. The neutron star armor and the system he and Thor built together, that is indeed a terrifying weapon. It was designed for the imaginary enemy of the apocalypse. In the last battle with Ancient Snake, it was the only weapon that could fight against Ancient Snake, and it was also the main force of that war. Because Tawny's mind wasn't strong enough to withstand that power, he didn't even use 1/10 of the armor's power last time. Rogers explained. Can Atom defeat him? Bruce couldn't help but ask. Rogers sensed the anxiety in the professor's weak will and sighed. I don't know. I can only pray to God that Atom will not fail. Chen Ong strolled towards him with the Titan's godly body. The distance between them was not shortened at all. He was only looking at Chen-Ong at the same level in his mind. Neither of them used their eyes to observe the world. In the world of their consciousness, both of them were equally imposing giants. When they were reflected in the real world, the distorted dimensions of space turned the two of them into opposite existences that were both extremely big and extremely small, extremely far and extremely close. Charles. Chen-Ong looked at the sword in his hand in loneliness. Feeling the familiar waves beside Sargera's consciousness, he sighed. You've done your best. He looked at Sargera's and said the familiar name. He suddenly laughed. I suddenly understand why Apocalypse gave you this name. Why? The Titan god suddenly asked. This was the first time he had spoken since he was whole. Sargeras, who didn't care about the bugs at his feet, lowered his head. Obviously, this question was also very meaningful to him. Chen-Ong looked at him and said seriously, because of loneliness. When you first came to this world, did you especially want to say, the world is dirty again? Chen-Ong asked curiously with a smile. The Titan's face suddenly became very calm. He nodded and said, yes, but I resisted. Sometimes I just want to leave some familiar marks on this world. Not to play with you, but to remember the past. Chen-Ong raised the sword and looked at the elegant and simple shape of the sword. He couldn't help but let go of something that had always been in his heart. He felt the same loneliness as Apocalypse. He whispered the poem, and the sword in his hand swung out. Alone in a foreign land, a stranger, the vibrating gold sword turned into a long rainbow and pierced through heaven and earth. In Chen-Ang's hand, the sword lost its fixed form. In the frequency of sound, it was sound. In the frequency of electromagnetic waves, it was electromagnetic waves. In the sky, the sword's aura spread across the sky. In the wind, the sword's sound was clear and melodious. In the ground, the magnetic field was as sharp as the sword's will. It was an invisible and intangible gravitational wave. It was an invisible and intangible matter wave. It was a formless and intangible photon wave. It was a vibrating gold sword with a tangible and intangible form. This sword existed in all things. It traced the river of time and chased the future cause and effect, crossing parallel worlds. It hid in dark matter, faster than light electrons, faster than space-time fissures, and eager to reverse cause and effect. This sword could be called void concealment. Sargera's body, which was more than 10 kilometers tall, was facing a great enemy. The enclosed gravity circle around his body distorted time and space. Chen-Ang's sword, which was as small as an ant, actually gave him a feeling of impending disaster. Compared to his body, the sword, which was as small as a toothpick, exuded a sharp aura that could cut him in half. On some levels, it might not be able to hurt him, but in the virtual space, in the spiritual world, in the universe of quantum entanglement, and in the fluctuating tides of vacuum, the omnipresent sword had a fatal power. The sword hid in the void and was omnipresent. He had to block this attack in all its forms, and the complete sword was the void concealment sword that encompassed all forms. As long as he ignored it and could not find a single state of the sword in the physical universe, it was equivalent to being struck by a sword. Whether it was in the upper reaches of the river of time, when tracing the origin of Sargera's neutron star, a light sword at the most critical point caused a supernova explosion to produce other possibilities, or reversing the scale of reality in the virtual space, ignoring the relative relationship between space and size, and cutting the doll-like Sargeras with one sword, they were all terrifying states that could threaten Sargeras. This sword isn't bad. Sargeras rose, perfectly round as one. He penetrated his self through all levels. His hands folded into a strange mudra, and the majestic body of the Titan god suddenly emitted a feeling of perfection, seamlessness, compassion, and enlightenment. In Chen-Ong's eyes, the Titans, who were originally scattered in dozens of different levels and different spaces, suddenly collapsed as one. From his physical body to his shadow, the quantum entanglement, dark matter, antimatter, and the microscopic world, the different levels and states of Sargeras suddenly merged as one, like King Kong. Even if your sword hides in the void, I am the only one. With a madra in hand and a compassionate expression on his face, Sargeras was like a god and a Buddha. No matter how sharp Chin Ang's sword was, it turned into a spring breeze, and the unshakable King Kong. Chin Ong vaguely heard a clear yell. Buddha's palm, first style, heaven and earth, I am the only one. Heaven and earth were perfectly round as one. Chin Ang's sword didn't work. He suddenly retracted his sword and looked at Sargeras in a daze. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He said ferociously, "Apocalypse, you're ruthless." Chapter 309. Chin Ang's sword energy has exceeded the limits of what the Avengers can perceive, and only Bruce, who is on the verge of transforming, can see a little bit of it, but this kind of sword light, which is beyond the general concept of speed, is useless in front of Sargeras. At this moment, Yondu did not have the lofty sentiments and ambitions he had before. He was hiding in the main control room of the spaceship with the strongest protection, and his heart was horrified. He no longer had the slightest thought of going against the two monsters. Terra Star is too dangerous. I want to go back to the Silver Heart District. Although the dispute between the Kree and the Chandrans is dangerous, and the war between the Klee Empire and the Skrull is terrible, it is not as terrible as the planet of Terra. Inadvertently looking up, Yondu saw that something was wrong with Nebula not far away from him. Whether it was opening her mouth, shouting, or the change of expression, it was as if she was half a beat slow. In my lifetime, I never want to come to a place like Orion again. There's something wrong with your state. Nebula heard a series of sounds like a chain gun, and then saw Yondu suddenly turn into a shadow, then get slower and slower, and finally walk in front of her. "What's going on?" Nebula asked in surprise. Yondu's face suddenly turned pale, and he looked back at the scavengers not far away from them. They were like a video that had been fast-forwarded several times, and then he looked at the Avengers closer to the Titan God. They were like characters frozen in a picture. The closer we get to the Titan, the slower time passes. Because the scale of space here has been stretched. Yondu almost screamed. He held his head with both hands and said in fear, "Don't you understand? The body of that Titan God has a very strong gravitational force, and near his body, the scale of space is shortened. We seem to be only 2 kilometers away from him, but in fact it may be as long as several light-years." "What?" Nebula blinked her eyes in horror. "But we can't feel the change in gravity." Yondu looked even more frightened, "because someone is controlling this place. This is a space formed by his will distorting the real world, and all the rules here are distorted. Look at that group of people." Yondu pointed to the Avengers and said to Nebula, "They are the normal size in our consciousness, but in reality, according to their actual scale, they are only the size of dust, and we can't see them at all. It is another will that has come here that has distorted all this." He denied the actual physical effects of gravity. He blurred the boundary between consciousness and reality here. Yondu's voice was hoarse, and an expression of extreme fear appeared on his face, and he said in a very struggling tone, "Titans are very terrifying, but what is even more terrifying is the people who distort everything here. Slayer Lord can't do all this." Nebula also said, "He can control 6 infinity gems, maybe he can, but he is far from being able to do such a terrible thing. Nebula is scared out of her wits. She can already feel the difference in the flow of time between her head and her body." Yondu and Nebula tried to keep their body parts parallel to the Titan. Behind them, some of the scavengers had already lost blood to the head due to the different speed of blood flow. Even if the apocalypse distorts the laws here, making the huge physical destructive power of the Titan's divine body unable to be exerted, the fragile mortals here can't withstand the impact of direct contact with a neutron star. Nebula's consciousness has begun to blur, and Yondu is just struggling. The two of them are hugging each other tightly, helping each other to reduce the time difference between their bodies. On the spatial scale, their bodies exist in the state of consciousness, so they are not affected by the spatial scale and shrink, but in terms of the sense of time, their consciousness can't eliminate the pressure brought by the chaotic flow of time outside. "Mom, I want to go home," Nebula cried in a trance. Among the Avengers, except for Bruce, who has transformed into Hulk, the consciousness of the others has also fallen, and the impact of the chaotic sense of time on their perception is only immune to monsters like Hulk, who are completely obedient to their instincts. The Professor's consciousness is connected to Hulk's, helping him to stay awake. Because they are relatively far from the center of the battle between Chen-Ong and Sargeras, the time flow they see is hundreds of times faster than where Chen-Ong is, but even so, they can only see a silver sword shadow, revolving around the center, Sargeras, who looks like a giant of more than 10 meters tall. And from Chen-Ang's point of view, the world is completely different. His speed doesn't slow down, but the scale of space around the Titan's body can be said to be very close. Sargeras is only a dozen meters tall in his conscious body, but in the undistorted laws of reality, his body includes the space of several light years around him, and the closer it is to his body, the larger the scale of space is. He's cheating again. Chen-Ong is already extremely angry. His attack can't get close to Sargeras at all, just the last millimeter of the surface of Sargeras' Titan body, but the actual scale of space is as high as 2 light years away, and when the flying sword passes by gets close to Sargeras, it shrinks sharply, and its speed almost stops. The reason is actually very simple. The further the distance between two objects on the surface of Sargeras' body, the actual scale of their actual distance will increase to an exaggerated scale. But from the point of view of the conscious state, it seems that wherever Sargeras raises his hand, everything shrinks into a tiny millimeter and burrows into his palm. "I can't attack Sargeras' body," Chen-Ong thought quietly. Chen-Ong silently thought to himself, even with the fastest speed, it would take 2 years to travel from 1 millimeter of his skin to his body. This is a barrier of time. Next to the Titan body, a short distance becomes a long distance. If there is no apocalypse distorting this world, then the moment Sargeras appears in this world, the Earth will continue to shrink from a huge volume, while rapidly approaching Sargeras, its appearance will shrink rapidly, becoming a planet the size of a fist, or even a ball the size of a thumb, after 2 years, or even longer, slowly approaching Sargeras bit by bit. This distorted space of the apocalypse has a very contradictory place. On one hand, from the point of view of the conscious state, the distance of space does not exist to my consciousness, so in my view, Sargeras is only a dozen meters tall. But in the actual scale of space, the space here still functions. In a sense, this is an illusion. Chen-Ong closed his eyes, turned off the point of view of the conscious state, and looked at this space again from the point of view of real space. In the void, a boundless big hand stuck to a closed flower of space. The owner of the big hand stood on the earth, staring at the flower in his hand that was both huge and extremely small. On the outside, it was only the size of a flower, but on the inside, it encompassed the space of tens of miles around the Earth, and it was sealed and expanded into an endless closed-loop space. The smiling apocalypse holding the flower was watching both Adam and Sargeras. In the flower, the Titan body was endless, occupying most of the entire space, like a giant dark golden Buddha standing in the center of the flower of space. The rest of the space surrounded the Titan body evenly, and the distance between every inch of space and every part of the Titan body was the same. And Adam stood in the void a few light years away from the giant Buddha-like Titan body, looking back at the smiling apocalypse outside the flower. The whole world was like a dream, a fantasy, a story, drifting between illusion and reality. Chen-Ong finally understood and murmured, "So this is the 6th form of the Buddha's palm, the Pure Land in the palm, the Buddhist kingdom of the world. He finally understood. When Sargeras used the natural spacetime barrier outside the neutron star to pull himself in, the unique space created by gravity and spacetime had already used the sixth form of the Buddha's palm, and the space where Chun-Ong was in was grasped in the palm. Whether Chun-Ong wanted to escape from this space or attack Sargeras, he had to pass through the space barrier of a few light years, and Sargeras only needed to wait for Chun-Ong to sink deeper and deeper into this Buddhist kingdom of the palm, until he sank into oblivion forever. Chapter 310. Professor, can you use that big move again? Chun-Ong said with some embarrassment. Perhaps sensing the fear in his words, he added, "It's not that I can't beat him head-on, but the last time I traced back time and projected into the future, a part of myself has been eroded by the apocalypse. This time, maybe it's also a plot of the apocalypse. If I borrow the power of the apocalypse again, my personality may be assimilated by him. Last time when I projected me in the parallel world, other than that cult leader Chun, I also sensed His Holiness Ong Chun. Now that I've projected him over, with an extraordinary divine power, creation and end, I can destroy Sargeras' soul and end his existence." Adam. The professor sighed. "Please show some of your courage as a part of that great being. It seems that you can't do anything." Chun-Ong sighed. "All right. I was just joking. How can I admit defeat? But the apocalypse is only to prevent us from hurting Earth. It didn't completely seal off this space. Maybe there's still a chance." "What about the Avengers?" Chun-Ong turned to look at the group of people beside him who were in a sorry state. His eyes lit up when he saw Hulk, who could barely hold on. The professor refused. "Don't think about doing anything to them." Chun-Ong looked up at the professor's will in the void, pointed at Hulk and complained, "I won't hurt him. If the ancient snake hadn't imprisoned my ability, I would have done it myself. It's not a big deal not to be a human. This world is fair. The apocalypse also sacrificed many things to become strong, including human nature, feelings, and even beliefs and dreams. He has sacrificed so much for the pursuit of truth. We want to defeat him without sacrificing? That's a dream. Hulk has a lot of potential. There's a possibility that he can fight against the apocalypse and even defeat his creation." "You just said that they're just a joke," the professor questioned in a low voice. "If they don't have the heart to give everything." Chun-Ong shook his head and said, "Then they are indeed just a joke. Being used isn't something unacceptable. If you want to obtain power that won't be manipulated by the apocalypse, even if you want to make a deal with the demons, they have to consider it. I want to hear his advice." Hulk stood up and said. He felt the professor's benevolent will that was like that of a teacher. He turned his head and glanced at the Avenger, who had fallen into a desperate situation. Suddenly, as if he had made up his mind, he fearlessly looked into Chun-Ang's eyes and said firmly, "If sacrifice is necessary, then take whatever you need." Looking at the peaceful temperament that Hulk exuded, which was close to that of a professor, Chun-Ong suddenly fell into silence. "Although my power is somewhat limited because of the restrictions on my ability to transform myself." Chun-Ong ignored the distorted spacetime that was closing and said slowly, "My wisdom is not limited. What can be created by the apocalypse, I can theoretically achieve. I can analyze the life mechanism of the Titans and study the unique forms of the outer god. What I lack is time. Because I don't have the dependence and physical forms created by the apocalypse, my ability is limited by physical and material conditions, but I can still complete some exquisite ideas." Hulk continued his words, for example, splitting you into 3 parts. Chun-Ong suddenly explained excitedly, "I've studied your genes, body essence, and high-dimensional soul. According to some of your data analyzed by the apocalypse in my memory, and some of my supplementary research, I can divide your unique body and soul into several parts and recombine them. Hulk, it's Bruce and you who limit your ability." Chernong looked at Hulk's green body as if he was looking at a perfect white mouse. He said excitedly, "Your body contains some perfect materials, such as anger, power, and the desire to destroy. I can use the outer god's concept of entropy, the core technology of aggregation, and part of the technology of the Titan's body to express the potential of those materials." He waved his hand and pulled out the aggregation concept projection that represented Hulk and Bruce, separated them in the void, and explained in a distorted manner, "Bruce's personality has an emotional power with unlimited potential, love. This power can even suppress Hulk's destruction, anger, and unlimited power. As we all know, only one powerful power can control another powerful power. So, Hulk, the power of Bruce in your body has been seriously underestimated. These two powers not only don't help, but also suppress each other and limit your potential. There are two kinds of materials in Bruce's heart. One is anger and hatred caused by childhood shadows, and the other is love. We can use it, because the power of love is not stable enough. My suggestion is to distort this emotion and mold it into another emotion, hatred. From love to hatred, I'm very familiar with how to distort this emotion. Please believe me, and please believe in the technological strength of the apocalypse. If you can help, Professor, then it's foolproof. According to my calculations, just the hatred part alone is no less powerful than Sargera's." The professor was shocked, and his willpower wavered for a moment, not because of the temptation of Chen Eng's plan, but because he was deeply shocked by the apocalypse and Adam's bold imagination, precise experiments, and shameless scientific spirit. On the other side, Chen Ong was still promoting his experimental plan. After making a relatively complete use of Bruce's personality, there may still be some materials left, but those negative emotions can be integrated into Hulk's personality to continue to be used. For Hulk's relatively simple personality, which is composed of anger and the desire to destroy, we only need to simply classify him into two kinds of negative emotions, and we can completely make use of him. In this way, using the concept aggregation, and even a part of the characteristics of entropy, we can dissect three relatively perfect souls. Coupled with the professor's mastery, and I also have in-depth research on spiritual materialization technology, we can completely divide Bruce, who has transformed into Hulk, into three opposite individuals. Chernong explained to Hulk, "Let me think. If they have names, they should be Mephisto, Baal, and Diablo, representing hatred, destruction, and anger. What do you think of this plan?" Chernong looked at Hulk expectantly. He unfolded the design plan of dissecting Bruce's soul, emotions, and concept in front of Hulk, so that he could completely understand the whole process of being divided and recombined. In Chen Eng's view, this was full of sincerity. There were not many lab rats in this world who knew what kind of experiment they were being used for. But in Hulk's view, this made him tremble, afraid, and angry. And Chen Ong was still revising some parts of the design plan. He added, "It may be a little hard to accept. Sometimes you will wonder if the divided you is still yourself. I should add a fusion function to ensure that they can recombine back to your original personality under certain conditions, without affecting, and even more efficiently using your power. If that's the case, then the recombined personality should be called Bruce Hulk. Diablo Bruce Hulk." Chapter 3:11. Although the design drawing only had a rough direction and no specific experimental design, the most precious design ideas could already be displayed in front of everyone. Not to mention the various ingenious and anti-logical design ideas, just the revealed feasibility was enough to shock the professor and Bruce speechless. At least with Bruce's scientific literacy, he could not see any problems. But the problem was that he could not see any problems. The professor firmly rejected it without hesitation. "I won't let my students do this kind of thing. In this plan, I don't find that you treat him as an individual or a person. I only see absolute rational analysis and cold and ruthless data. Yes, you seem to have maintained the integrity of Hulk. But that kind of integrity is as an object, as a system, not as a person? Adam, this makes me wonder if you still have human nature. The professor questioned excitedly. It has nothing to do with human nature. To be honest, as an experimenter, I don't pay attention to what you call human nature. If this is considered to be dehumanizing, then I have already been dehumanized dozens of times. When have we not changed ourselves in our search for the truth? Holding on to the attitude of retaining human nature and preserving oneself will only turn oneself into a fixed frame of the past. In my opinion, this kind of idiot who doesn't change, doesn't move, doesn't progress, and lives in memory and human nature is the one without human nature. In my opinion, yes, Hulk may become something else. He may be cold and ruthless, dehumanized, and his emotions and rationality are distorted in the transformation. But so what? Who hasn't experienced it? Your perspective is still in a low latitude in the mortal period. If you trace back time and cross the past and future, you will find that he has not changed. If your consciousness covers all parallel universes, omniscient and omnipotent, you will also find that he has not changed. This is just a future, a possibility. For you, memory is not important, as long as the past exists. Even if you trace back to the great existence behind you, you don't even need the past. But for us, memory and emotions are everything we have, it is us. You can propose all the paradoxes to prove that we are constantly killing our past selves, but for the present, I exist. The professor said sadly. You and Apocalypse stand too high. You have forgotten everything that is most precious as a mortal. I think, therefore I am, sighed the professor. Don't you even think about touching a hair of Bruce's memories and feelings? The professor said firmly. He glared at Chen-Ong, and the will in the void firmly refused Chen-Ong to approach Hulk. One day you will understand. Chen-Ong didn't insist. He just looked at the professor and Bruce and said, You're still not mature enough. Professor, we're the same kind of people after all. When you understand, you will sing this song with me. Chen-Ong rolled up the design and handed it to Hulk, placing it in his palm. I hope that you won't open this design one day, but reality often doesn't live up to expectations. When you open it again, I hope you will understand whether it is Diablo or Hulk. He's always been you, and that has never changed. 50 years of life, compared to heaven and earth, is just a small thing. Fortunately, I still have a backup plan. Chen-Ong sighed. He turned to the professor and said, Now, only you are not trapped in this universe, and I can temporarily erase my existence in this time period, jump to the future, cut in again, and load the file to be reborn. But the Avengers and the alien friends over there may disappear forever. Do you have any way to save them? If it doesn't work, I can only recreate them. But there will be a logical flaw that can easily be locked by Apocalypse, and these test subjects will all be worthless. The professor's consciousness seemed to be paying attention to other places. He transmitted all the chaotic images to Chen-Ang's consciousness. It was some fragments of light and shadow, and only some afterimages of fast-moving photons could be seen, but Chen-Ong still deciphered some things. He waved his hand and a broken light and shadow appeared, pointing to a figure that passed by and said, Someone is on the way? Welcome, old friend of the Republic, Professor X. Luo Ji smiled. Ever since we parted during the apocalypse, it's been two different worlds. It's rare to see an old friend again. Of course, Apocalypse doesn't count. We're so unlucky to always see him. I didn't expect to see you again in this world. The professor slowly pushed his wheelchair out and smiled. Luo Ji shook his head. This kind of coincidence worries me. I'm always afraid that we didn't get out of that universe, just got lost for a while, and then returned to that nightmare. Now, it's only a few 100,000 years after that disaster, or even a few million years later. We're still struggling in the control of apocalypse. That will make us despair, because we have no way to escape. In the timeline of apocalypse, the longer time passes, the longer the nightmare, and we can never escape. He cast a questioning look at the professor, as if waiting for an answer. The professor seemed to be lost in his memories. After you left, the whole world collapsed. At that time, there were only a group of ghosts, some struggling humans, us mutants, and a group of monkeys. Caesar. Do you remember him? The monkeys who were scared out of their wits by humans. Apocalypse created Messiah and gave him its name, then left that broken world, completely destroying Earth before leaving. And Messiah, the Apocalypse, led us to this world. He first came to Earth when the world was still barren. He was upstream in the river of time, before the solar system was born, when the Milky Way was still in chaos, and he shaped this galaxy. He created Earth and life, and for countless years after that, he always created this world in the form of Earth, to cleanse the entire universe, bringing death, famine, war, and plague to the entire universe. He is the eternal shadow and the most terrible legend of the entire multiverse. Until 3 million years ago, he personally gave the apes the key to evolution, and the apes that had already proliferated throughout the 9 planets were able to evolve like us, finally obtaining the name of human. Since then, Apocalypse has maintained its established timeline, not allowing any deviation until the return of Apocalypse. Chapter 312. So that's how it is. Luoji muttered to himself for a moment before letting out a long sigh. I didn't expect the apocalypse of this world to be 2 people. The information we received from other sources seems to have been a little off. However, the other forces of this world seem to have mistaken the target of the apocalypse because of us. The apocalypse is our calamity, and the humans of this world have confused the relationship between the Messiah calamity and our apocalypse calamity. We are facing one enemy, but it can also be said that there are 2. The Messiah hasn't appeared in front of us yet, and their preparations against him are all aimed at the wrong person. The professor came to a realization. According to the laws discovered by the humans of this universe, the impending calamity hasn't actually happened yet. Luo Ji understood. The enemy in their prophecy is the Apocalypse Messiah, not the Apocalypse. These are all questions that we need to think about slowly. The professor suddenly interrupted Luo Ji's deductions and said anxiously, "This time, I'm here to ask for your support." He raised his hand and projected a light screen from his wheelchair. On it flashed some blurry images, but they could just barely make out the dark golden outline in the center of the image. Sargeras, another terrifying enemy has appeared, and this time, he's more dangerous than ever. The professor raised his hand and drew on the huge dark golden body, enlarging the image and making it clearer. Luoji looked at the satellite footage with a serious expression. The footage was very short, and Sargeras' appearance was less than 3 seconds. Another creation of the apocalypse, the professor interrupted him. No, it's a series of creations. It's not just Sargeras. It looks like it's only one body, but in reality, it's the product of several existences. Now that Sargeras has appeared, it's even more obvious. The one who took the neutron star armor and rebuilt his body is Sargeras, and the omnipresent intelligence core that controls the world's network is Ultron. What's corrupting this world is the concept of entropy. They're also divided into many different personalities. Only Sargeras has a body now, but the other existences are equally dangerous. Luoji understood. You're saying that those consciousnesses can all obtain bodies? Yes. The professor replied. When I was suffering from the darkness in Sargeras' heart, I also obtained part of his memory. Some of it was left in his mind by the apocalypse. This part of the information is very messy and distorted by the darkness. I can't decipher it for now, but I can understand Sargera's own memory. All the outer gods have bodies designed by Apocalypse. As long as they come into contact with the messengers of plague and famine, they will instantly obtain a body that can carry their consciousness. This is also a weapon designed by Apocalypse to target us. This is his test. Every outer god's carrier targets the weakness of our civilization. When we destroy them, we will naturally be able to evolve and improve. A Zathos is a deformed and crazy Zerg form. He should be the old enemy of us Celestials. As for Yog-Sothoth, his body is completely composed of distorted spatial structures. It is said to contain the mysteries of dimensions, space-time, and truth. His appearance is like countless spatial bubbles stacked together in a spatial structure that we can't understand. He is the mortal enemy of your civilization. Sabu Nigurath represents the maternal power of reproduction and distortion. She will be the most dangerous enemy of the Soviet. Nyarlathotha will subvert the European community. While Nyarlathotha and Ultron will target the humans of this world, including the United States and the Nazi Gareth. They will completely destroy the Mu continent and Atlantis. The ancient serpent gnawed at the world tree and brought dusk to the Asgardians. Thanatos, if he is not dead, Sargeras will completely end him and the swallowing star. The messengers of death will revel on the corpse of the goddess of death. The messengers of plague will devour eternity. The messengers of war will destroy the infinite. Famine and oblivion will fall into the abyss of the end together. This is the ending set for this universe by Apocalypse. Whether it's me, the Black Phoenix, Magneto, or the Black Bat King, all the other great existences in this world will be personally dealt with by Messiah Tianchi. Everyone has a predetermined destination, and each of them has a tribulation that Tianchi has set for them. If we can't unite, then this time, the universe will flow with rivers of blood. So you indulge the birth of Adam? Luoji asked in return. Adam is not our enemy. Who can guarantee that? Apocalypse. Luoji looked into the professor's eyes and asked. He's just another one of Tianqi's games. His position is completely in Tianqi's hands. He's just a puppet, pinning his hopes on Tianqi and hoping that he'll destroy himself? Tianqi painted an illusory and beautiful future for you, and you just believe it? The professor was silent. He only looked at Luoji with determination and said softly, "This is a test given to us by Apocalypse. It is also a test for himself. We will not be afraid. The liberators will destroy Sargeras, but we will destroy Adam as well." Luoji said solemnly, "For the Republic, for civilization, for humanity, we will swing our swords, and we will not rest until we are dead. The liberators gather." The last roar was from Luoji, who turned around and said to his teammates nearby. Luoji's body trembled slightly, and he turned into a stream of light in front of the professor, rushing into the sky. The Geno armament in his body quickly changed shape, and an endless stream of electromagnetic force was extracted from the air, turning his whole body into plasma. The plasma cells had a strong interaction force between them, cutting the magnetic field of the Earth, and he rushed out at a speed of over Mach 15. Beside him, Natasha and Bucky were wrapped in mobile armor, the anti-gravity engine giving them the power to break through the speed of sound. Kong Keenan flew at high speed in the blue sky, the intense friction in the air and the temperature of over 5,000 degrees only making his combat suit a little brighter. Yang Qi traveled through the cracks of space, and he was the most comfortable of all. In the end, Vision turned his electronic body into a bolt of lightning, rushing through the clouds like a dragon or a snake, with thunder and lightning surging. The professor looked at the afterimages left behind when they left, staring at the trails left by the clouds in the sky, and thought to himself, "What is the Apocalypse trying to do? I don't know if my choice is right or wrong. We are only fighting for a little hope for this world, for the civilization and people we love. Hurry up, liberators, time is running out." Chapter 313. On Luonan's spaceship, a group of scavengers had already fainted, leaving only Yondu and Nebula who were still struggling. They did not know how many times they had cursed Luonan in their hearts. Even though Nebula was still Luonan's subordinate, after seeing the strange phenomenon of time and space being reversed in this enclosed space, she had already thrown Luonan's majesty to the back of her mind. Even the shadow of Thanos in her heart was not as terrible as Terra's star at this moment. Why? Nebula said weakly, why did I come to this place? Luonan, that idiot. He killed me. The universe is so big, there are hundreds of millions of planets in the Milky Way galaxy. How did he find such a dangerous place? Nebula raised one of his robotic arms and suddenly asked Yondu, am I hallucinating? Why do I feel like it has become a little younger? You're not mistaken. Yondu looked at his face in the light of Nebula's brand new robotic arm, touching the face that had suddenly become a lot younger. If Yondu did not still remember his young appearance, he would not have dared to recognize the figure on it. Time is flowing backwards here. Yondu struggled to lie up and sighed as he looked at his hands that had become younger. Suddenly, his pupils contracted slightly. The cabin in front of him was empty just now, but under such circumstances, a pile of unconscious people were stacked on the ship, and the figure of Chen-Ong appeared quietly in front of him. It seems that the relationship between you two is getting better very quickly. Yondu struggled to stand up. He felt that the sequelae of the time and space layer on his body were easing, and the organs that were necrotic because of the different flow of time in his brain and body were gradually regaining their vitality. There seemed to be a space-time hole around him, causing the distorted scale of space to be repelled outside the spaceship. Yondu saluted fearfully and said, I'm glad to see you return safely, my boss. Not bad. Chen-Ong looked at him and saw Yondu's honest appearance. He nodded and said, the professor's efforts to trace back your state were not in vain. Of course, because the professor did not have your body data, your current body was shaped according to the genetic backtracking. And her. Chen-Ong pointed to Nebula and said, her body has been transformed beyond recognition. I could only refurbish the materials. However, this body modification of yours is too primitive and low-level. Thanos' technical reserves are not sufficient. Chen-Ong projected the mechanical blueprint of Nebula's body for her to see. As a Cyberman, his combat power is actually lower than that of a carbon-based creature in armor. Chen-Ong pulled out Iron Man's unconscious body. Thanos is a disgrace to us. Cyberization is a promising route. It's much easier than fusing carbon-based nuclear cells and metals. Thanos hasn't mastered the core technology yet. But I'm different. Chen-Ong squatted in front of Nebula and looked at her seriously. Do you desire power? A strong emotion mixed with fear and desire suddenly surged in Nebula's heart. She vaguely recalled that when Thanos came to her, he was equally calm. He seemed to be concerned, but in fact, he was indifferent. He asked almost the same question. However, the difference was that in Thanos' eyes, Nebula could still see his desire for her, although it was only a desire for a tool. But in the eyes of Chen-Ong, there was only a kind of interesting curiosity. After a painful struggle, Nebula still gave the same answer. I desire power. Please give me power, Master. Don't call me Master. I'm not interested in who your body belongs to. I just want to try another path other than the cyberization of human organs like the Soviet Black Star Warriors. The research projects of the experimental party are endless. I really envy Apocalypse for having 4 teams that can perfectly cooperate with him, and that brain that can carry out countless thread analysis at the same time. Chen-Ong sighed as he checked the laboratory on the spaceship. He found that the Kree were indeed a fighting race. There were only 2 simple and narrow laboratories on the military spaceship. As he dismantled the useless weapons and living space for the combatants, he modified the battleship according to Chen-Ang's redesign of the research spaceship. At the same time, he sorted out the ideas of modifying nebula. At the same time, he could imagine how to upgrade his brain into a computer. Time passed quickly as Chen-Ong modified the battleship. Although the time flow in the distorted space of Apocalypse was 10 times faster than the outside world, with the speed of the Liberator, they still arrived at the east coast of Africa after 8 hours, above the sea where the Indian Ocean disappeared. Looking at the empty and boundless sea below, Natasha was confused. According to the data of the expansion of the universe, it can be confirmed that the space that suddenly disappeared is located at this coordinate. Captain Luoji, the Republic of China is the country with the most advanced space technology in the Human Revolutionary Alliance. Can you detect the anomaly nearby? The surrounding dimension expansion rate is normal, the vacuum energy cycle is normal, and the quantum resonance frequency is normal. We can eliminate the possibility of a super large space bubble, dimensional reduction weapons, and dark space. Illusion. It's all up to you. Luoji turned to a jumping electric current floating in the air. The electric current suddenly became blurry. It disappeared into the void, and when it reappeared, it had turned into a metallic human figure. He was wrapped in a red cloak, and there was a yellow gem the size of a pinky embedded in his forehead. Illusion looked at the spherical space in front of them that was several dozen kilometers in diameter. The space around it was in an extremely complicated state, maintaining a balance. Illusion organized his words and replied, "This is a pocket universe, but its entrance uses a quasi-state technique. It will take some time to decipher it, so I suggest that the professor help us locate it. That way we can enter directly." This was natural. No one would think that such a barrier would be able to stop the professor. He was an existence that could travel as far as his thoughts could reach. "Professor, if you let them in like this, will they kill me as well?" Chen-Ong asked doubtfully from inside the neutron star trap. The professor was in a dilemma. He could only say uneasily, "The Liberators might not be able to accept the fact that you are an individual independent from Apocalypse. I can't influence their actions." Chen-Ong could only sigh. "Let them in. Who knows, I might even have to work with Sargeras." Chapter 314. Sensing the anomaly in the neutron star trap, Chen-Ong could not help but turn his gaze to the other side of the dimension. He said in awe, "The Chinese government's attainments in space science are, at the pinnacle. This kind of compound pocket universe that combines gravity, space-time distortion, and the deepening of the dark world can be easily deciphered. Even I am impressed." After helping the Liberator lock on to the coordinates, the professor retracted his consciousness to Chen-Ong. He sensed Chen-Ang's words and asked thoughtfully, "Then, in your opinion, how far away are they from the Apocalypse? You can't lie to me." The professor's consciousness was shocked. He asked, "Is the gap really that big?" "The horror of the Apocalypse that I can describe and the power of the Apocalypse that you can imagine is only a fraction of it. To put it simply, I can borrow the power of my future Apocalypse at any time to increase my power by multiple fold. Then, the Apocalypse is a being that already contains the fourth dimension. Can't a being that transcends the timeline come to this world as a future body?" Chen-Ang's words were cruel but realistic. He added, "The reason I don't want to borrow the power of the Apocalypse is because I don't want to merge with that timeline and become the Apocalypse, but the Apocalypse does not have such a taboo. His past, present, and future are all his own. In other words, if you insist on defeating him, you better be prepared for the future body of the Apocalypse." "Then, how scary will his future be?" The professor's voice was weak. Chen-Ong sighed. "The future is unpredictable. Who knows what it will be like?" Suddenly, the dimension started to tremble. He retracted his attention from the conversation with the professor and focused on the dimension. "They're here." On the other side of the neutron star's massive gravitational tide, the extremely distorted space warped and folded, giving the dimension all sorts of strange properties. It was like a maze, but now there was a strange sound that only people like Chun-Ong and the professor, who could sense the dimension, could hear. It sounded like something invisible but extremely tough was being torn apart. Einstein-Rosen bridge? Why use this kind of thing to open the passage? Chun-Ong was a little puzzled. He thought for a while and said, "It shouldn't be. It's obviously more suitable to use spatial projection. Why open a high-dimensional passageway to the outside world? Also, the thing that's coming from the other side of the passage is a little too big. I can feel that the space here is becoming unstable." Chun-Ong raised his head and looked at the entrance of the tunnel. Sargeras had obviously noticed it too. The gravity in the surroundings had suddenly changed drastically, and a huge gravitational black hole was approaching. The right hand of the Titan divine body seemed to be connected to a black hole, covering the space there. Suddenly, a ray of white light poured out from the center of his palm. It was the radiation form of high-energy particles. Generally, only places with a high energy concentration and a high density of matter could have such radiation conditions exist. Then, there was a violent energy explosion that even the Titan's hand could not contain. The high-energy gamma-ray storm swept across the space in an instant. Chun-Ang's expression showed a rare loss of composure. He said in surprise, "They smashed a star in. They're creating a white hole-like eruption." In reality, on Barnard's star, which was 6 light-years away from Earth, illusion floated in the star's corona like a speck of dust. A huge vortex formed in the body of this star. Endless flames, gas, gaseous matter, and liquid were swallowed by the vortex. It could be said that a huge energy flow was blasted into the vortex. In the high-dimensional passage, this massive amount of matter, which was equivalent to the Tibetan Plateau every second, was distorted and ignited into extremely dense high-energy radiation, pouring into the other side of the passage. The surface of this red dwarf star, which was only 20 times the mass of Earth, suddenly darkened rapidly and collapsed into a huge crater. In the middle of the endless light radiation, a huge black body eroded the entire star. Luoji controlled all the energy in this place. His form could no longer be compared to that of a human. From a higher vantage point, he looked like a four-dimensional spatial bubble that had been twisted into a ring. His body was composed of heterogeneous dimensional matter and space. If one were to describe him in human terms, he would be like a transparent bubble that glowed with extremely condensed energy. Countless interconnected, complicated structures, and either closed or circulating spacetime formed him. The matter of Barnard's star that was swallowed was completely transformed into energy in his body. The energy torrent of transition was transformed into white hole-like degenerate matter and high-energy radiation in his palm, spewing out. Carrying the energy, the spacetime surged into Sargeras' trap. A massive amount of energy equivalent to 300,000 years of the sun's eruption directly hit the Titan's neutron star godly body. Looking from where Chun-Ong was millions of kilometers away, he could see that the high-energy matter enveloped the neutron star, burning everything. Mass, energy, atoms, and atomic nuclei were all vaporized. Together with Luoji's strange space that distorted dimensions, the entire space was boiling. The orderly spatial structure was directly destroyed, and the entire space turned into chaos. There was no energy, matter, or information. The completely chaotic space destroyed everything. Sargeras' Titan godly body broke from the wrist with a crack, and the hand that had turned into chaos and no order was left in that space forever. Information chaotic state. In information science, space can be seen as a set of orderly information. When this kind of information can't be read normally, it means that space can't behave normally. The internal information is already out of order, and this chaotic state will appear to wipe out all information. Chun-Ang's expression was solemn. He looked at the professor helplessly and said, "Looks like I might have to join forces with Sargeras. Otherwise, I might really die here." The Republic definitely discovered the essential relationship between matter, energy, and information, and that's why they developed such a crazy spatial information weapon. I wonder how their research on high-dimensional souls is going? Raising venomous insects to raise a Tyrannosaurus rex. This is really interesting. Maybe I can see the future existence of a certain test subject suddenly tear through space-time, descend, and kill the person who experimented on me 100 times. 100 times. Adam Chen-ong thought maliciously. Amidst the primal chaos, Luo Ji, in a strange yet ridiculously powerful manner, had descended once more. With a flip of his palm, the endless chaos merged into one, clearly separated from his existence, and couldn't be infected at all. Like waves, the chaotic and disorderly sea of energy, matter, and information had no space, no time, and no fixed form. It even slapped onto Sargera's body with difficulty. Chapter 3:15. Everything was like a supernova explosion. When the chaotic space impacted the neutron star god's body, the information chaos state's corrosive and infectious ability destroyed the space maze outside the Titan's body invincibly. These spatial scales were extremely distorted, equivalent to a distance of several light years. For the chaotic state that had no concept of space, it was as if it did not exist. The spatial maze formed by tremendous gravity had once firmly trapped Chen-ong and the professor, but in front of Luo Ji's spatial information structure descending upon the body of the first-generation torch dragon, it was no more tenacious than a piece of white paper. The chaotic spacetime information torrent was like a messy code in the universe, a kind of undecipherable chaos. When it contaminated Sargera's body, it was like a complete piece of data was suddenly inputted with a series of messy code. The chaos spread uncontrollably, and the powerful body of the neutron god inevitably began to collapse. However, Sargera's was ruthless enough to cut off 1/5 of his body, allowing it to merge into the chaotic information space where there was no space, no time, and even matter and energy were chaotic. The information chaos state is an imitation of the state that existed before the Big Bang, where there was no space, no matter, no energy, and everything that existed could not be understood or sensed. It violated the most basic order and laws that constituted the universe, and could not be understood by life in the universe. It could be said that it was a model in cosmology from the beginning. Because it was too chaotic, it was called nothingness. Taoists called it primordium of the 5 pre-celestial essences, and Buddhists called it void tribulation. Chen-ong peered at the chaos. His brain could no longer withstand such high-intensity calculations, and the logical concepts of his brain were not enough to understand the chaos. Therefore, he could only empty his mind and entrust a trace of spirituality to the omnipresent main body in the unseen world. Only then could he vaguely sense the information concept in the chaos. But in my eyes, the chaos that is devoid of concepts and like a black hole of information in a dimension can also be called mysterious chaos, just like the pocket universe that warps space and distorts probabilities in the neutron star can be called Buddha's kingdom in a palm. If it's apocalypse in his eyes, it might be more scientific and more realistic to describe the nature of this astronomical wonder, but with my brain, I can't make scientific, clear, and mathematical judgments, nor can I deduce it into formulas and summarize it into astronomy, physics, and information theory. I can only vaguely use philosophy and martial arts to summarize everything. Professor, I'm sorry. I have no choice but to intervene. Chen-ong sighed. He already had a vague idea of how to deal with Luo Ji's spatial weapon. At this moment, he was brimming with inspiration, and large amounts of data flooded into Chen-ang's mind at every moment, which he then incorporated into his own functional model. The dark primal chaos and the purple star river were mutually exclusive. In the beginning, the universe was in a chaotic and blazing state. It was only after the Big Bang that the universe's starry sky appeared. Originally, the mysterious primal chaos should have restrained the Purple Star River first. These two true meanings lay in chaos and order. However, chaos and order, as well as the chaos state of information and order state of chaos, how could they be so simple? Absolute beginning gave birth to absolute beginning, and void tribulation gave birth to tribulation. Thus, in order to break Luoji's nearly invincible information chaos form, one had to first destroy and then establish. The great extreme explosion would rebirth the profound universe, and then the Purple Star River would be born from the profound universe. To achieve this, Chen-Ong and Sargeras had to work together. Sargeras, supernova explosion. Chen-Ong roared at the Titan's divine body. Chen-Ong used his powerful will to trace back time and space, connecting with Sargeras' consciousness. The Titan easily understood Chen-Ang's meaning. Sargeras didn't hesitate to give up his enmity with Chen-Ong and work together to fight against their common enemy. Adam, take over my body. Sargeras didn't hesitate to give up control of the Titan's divine body. He sank his consciousness into the deepest part of his body and began to sleep. As he gave up his consciousness, under Chen-Ang's control, he sank into the memories of the river of time and began to dream. The time in the dream traced back the history of the planet to the moment when the neutron star was born, to the moment when the supernova was destroyed, and to the moment when Sargeras sank into darkness. The power provided by the degeneracy between the energy of the stellar nuclear fusion and the free electrons could no longer resist gravity. The Titan's body began to collapse as the supernova star collapsed. Unlike the supernova collapse in reality, the supernova in the dream revolved around a point, which was also the point where Sargeras' consciousness was asleep. In reality, the gravitational force that was so strong that it caused the entire space to tremble began to concentrate at the point of the chaos form. With the purest and purest data to fight against the information chaos, part of the dream became reality in the distorted space of the apocalypse. The Titan's body, the matter that escaped from the white hole, and everything in this space, including time and space, gathered at that point. The entire space collapsed toward a point, a black point that no one could see clearly. Luoji only had time to pull the spaceship that was enveloped by the professor's consciousness out of the space, and the space created by the apocalypse was completely destroyed. Everything was sucked into the black point, which contained everything and became a separate entity. In reality, a huge battleship suddenly appeared on the surface of the sea on the east coast of Africa, but that space was transferred to Barnard's star, which was 6 light-years away from Earth, through the channel that Luoji opened. The star was torn apart by a huge black hole, and endless energy and matter were swallowed by that terrible vortex. Looking at Barnard's star from tens of millions of kilometers away, a huge vortex that smashed the star swallowed everything. The entire star was sucked into an invisible gravitational black hole, and its speed reached more than 45,000 miles per second. The temperature of its core rose rapidly. Under the influence of gravity, the gas smashed into the core at close to the speed of light. The rebound effect caused some of the gas that entered the core to spin upward and be blown out of the core. The electrons and protons in the core squeezed to produce neutrinos. When the neutrinos passed through the dense gas, some of them were absorbed, and the gas gained a huge amount of energy, resulting in an earth-shattering explosion that produced light, gamma rays, and ultraviolet rays. The gas absorbed heat again, and the temperature rose to millions of degrees. However, all of these products were swallowed by the black hole and filled into that point mass. Chen-Ang's will tore through the void and descended on this star domain. He questioned angrily, "Why? I wasn't the one who beat you guys up. I wasn't the one who destroyed your mother planet. I wasn't the one who chased you guys into this universe and wanted to kill you all. I'm just an innocent person from the past. Why do you guys have to drag me into this war? Just because a persimmon has to find a soft target to bully?" Chen-Ong was extremely furious. His will enveloped the entire star domain, and his spiritual waves reverberated in all directions. I'm not a soft persimmon either. You guys are King bullying me. Even Buddha has fire. Just like the martial theory that Chen Ong followed in the unseen world, everything was originally empty and chaotic. The qi of yin and yang, as well as all matter, were chaotic and disorderly in the great void. They pushed and collided with each other, accumulating immeasurable power and triggering the birth of the universe, the Big Bang. This could be said to be the mysterious universe, Big Bang. Chapter 3:16. The Absolute Beginning had a Tao. The Tao and God existed together, and the Tao was God. The earth was empty and chaotic, and the abyss was dark. The existence of the gravitational anomaly broke through space-time, transcending matter, energy, and information. After Chen Ong and Sargeras worked together to push their power to a state that surpassed everything, the embryonic form of the universe appeared in Chen Ang's palm, and he slammed it down in the direction of the Liberator. It was the abyss of the absolute beginning, a void that could not be looked at directly. The absolute beginning had a Tao. The Tao and God existed together, and the Tao was God. The earth was empty and chaotic, and the abyss was dark. Let there be light. Chen Ang's body had already disappeared. The restrictions on his body had been silently broken, and he was devoured by the anomaly. Only his will was sighing in the void. After the abnormal point exploded, his will controlled the mysterious universe, Big Bang, and forcefully twisted the endless torrent of energy, turning the all-destroying wave into a world-rending might. He then used the momentum to unleash the second move, the mysterious universe, Genesis. It could also be called quantum cosmology. The birth of the universe was a quantum transformation from the Euclidean space to the Luo spacetime. This realized the idea of the universe being created from nothing. The Euclidean space was a four-dimensional ball. In the initial stage of the transformation of the four-dimensional ball into the Luo spacetime, spacetime was in a stage of explosion that could be described by the de Sitter metric. Then, the expansion slowed down, and it was described by the Big Bang model. The dark universe, Big Bang, and dark universe, Genesis, were two sides of the same coin. Just like Taiji, they fused the philosophy of existence and non-existence from the birth of the universe, and they were pushed to the peak in Chen Ang's hands. The embryonic form of the universe was born in his hands, and it was pushed in the direction of the Liberator. That power created everything and destroyed everything. The embryonic form of the universe was independent of this universe, but the power it pushed could shake the galaxy, leaving no escape. Take this dark universe, Genesis splitter. The Big Bang Genesis was like the Taiji yin and yang. It fused existence and nothingness, space-time, energy, and mass. After the positive and negative universes, it raised the power of the mysterious universe to a whole new level, which was the Genesis splitter. The two massive satellites of Barnard's star that were in front of the Liberators shattered like biscuit. From the Liberator's point of view, the entire gas planet first began to cave in, and then it began to break apart. All kinds of hot lava gas and degenerate electron gas erupted from the core of the planet, and then they were swallowed by the embryonic universe like biscuit. The whole process did not take more than 2 seconds. A gas giant the size of Jupiter was swallowed by the quantum void of the embryonic universe. Kong Keenan slammed his palm with all his might. As the basic unit of space under the Planck scale distorted and vibrated, the mighty power that encompassed space-time swept through the entire void. This terrifying power caused countless spatial tears along the way. Because it exceeded the concept of motion and speed, the surging palm force appeared in every inch of space in the entire star system at the same time. The fluctuating ocean of energy in the void suddenly erupted with all its energy. In the Planck time, the positive and negative virtual particles that appeared and disappeared in pairs were swept by this power. Endless matter and energy appeared in the void. Every inch of space erupted with energy comparable to the sun, and the entire star system became a boiling tide of energy and matter. The degenerate state of the high-energy matter in the energy tide rapidly declined to the state of highly concentrated helium matter. This liquid helium matter, which was equivalent to the liquid helium inside a star, only needed a slight change in pressure to erupt with all its energy. Kong Kenan was blocking the path of the embryonic universe. In the higher dimensional timeline, this newly created universe had already included them, so the liberators had nowhere to run. They could only fight it head-on. The young warrior of the Republic, Kong Kenan, solemnly faced the embryonic form of the universe that was crushing towards him. He raised his hand and ignited a sphere of helium the size of Earth around his body. In the center of his palm, the helium matter that was undergoing nuclear fusion went from a degenerate state to a helium flash. The extremely terrifying helium flash directly hit the embryonic form of the universe. The power that could tear the entire solar system apart was futile. With another flip of his palm, the highly concentrated helium matter in the entire star system gave him enough energy. Helium flash combo. The terrifying explosion once again hit the embryonic universe, but it did not even cause the universe to tremble. Meaningless attack, powerless counterattack. Chen-Ong sneered, his tone very unfriendly. You guys are gravely mistaken if you think I'm a pushover. I may not be as strong as the Apocalypse, but I'm not the type to be bullied so easily that I don't dare to fight back. Cry. Cry. Then die for me. However, Kong Kenan was not the slightest bit discouraged. In his palm, the helium flash once again emitted a terrifying whistling sound. Even in the vacuum of space, it could be heard. Helium flash second combo. The chain continued, the frequency getting faster and faster each time. The energy stacked on top of each other, and the amount of helium burned increased each time. The attack range and destructive power increased exponentially. The dense helium flash explosions occurred one after another. In just a short second, Kong Kenan flipped his palm more than 2,000 times, and each helium flash detonated in his palm almost without any time difference. The increase in energy and destructive power was almost limitless. More than 2,000 consecutive helium flashes hit the embryonic universe, each shockwave containing the power of the previous shockwave. More than 2,000 palm strikes stacked on top of each other, and it was already faintly shaking the deep embryonic universe. Kong Kenan's helium flash continued to explode again and again, from being unshakable to faintly shaking, and then directly shaking. Kong Kenan only used 5,000 consecutive hits. The embryonic universe that Sargeras and Chen-Ong were working together to maintain suddenly emitted a strong pressure. The originally dark and deep embryonic universe also began to faintly shake, and some kind of change was happening in the depths of the embryonic universe. As expected, a model is still a model. If the embryonic universe I created was the size of a galaxy, I wouldn't be worried about being destroyed by simple energy attacks like yours. But after all, the amount of matter collected isn't enough, and I can't create a universe on the scale of multiple galaxies. Chen-Ong sighed. I can only maintain the mysterious universe until his 9,999 consecutive helium flashes. Sargeras, together with me, we will once again sublimate the mysterious universe. In the embryonic universe, Sargeras' consciousness silently responded. Together with Chen-Ong, the huge embryonic universe began to split, encompassing the power of the entire timeline and sweeping everything in its path. Mysterious universe. Taiji diagram. Time scale -10 to the power of -43 seconds. The spacetime universe appeared from the quantum background of the embryonic universe. The power of the void engulfed and devoured all of Kong Kenan's attacks on the mysterious cosmos. It was like energy bombarding the void itself. Kong Kenan felt an incomparably deep and vast void power bearing the weight of his helium flash combo. Everything could be born. The void of the universe was as calm as the earth, and the mysterious universe returned to nothingness. Mysterious Universe. Chaos Bell. Time scale -10 to the power of -35 seconds. The mysterious universe was split into strong, weak, and gravitational forces. Chapter 317. Wind, Earth, Water, Fire, and Chaos reopened. The four fundamental forces were derived from the same field, encompassing the entire star field in one fell swoop. The degenerate helium matter piled up in the void was derived, divided, and gathered under Ch'en-Ang's control of the four fundamental forces. 9 yellow-grade stars formed the embryonic form of matter. In the embryonic form of the mysterious universe, hydrogen matter was derived under the immense pressure of gravity and finally ignited. Kong Kenan could only retreat in defeat against the universe's division and the four fundamental forces. Fortunately, he had Luoji's spatial barrier to protect him, which allowed him to survive the great power of the mysterious universe's evolution into a world and its destruction into life. Luoji's expression was abnormally solemn. He said to Kong Kenan and Yang Qi, "The following battle is no longer something you can participate in. Your descended bodies are material, and will be severely restrained by this fundamental force control power. You guys return to Earth first. Illusion and I will hold them off." But Sargeras. Kong Kenan wanted to say something but stopped, his young face full of doubt. Luoji laughed. Adam tricked Sargeras. He evolved Sargeras's body into the embryonic form of the universe. Although it made Sargeras stronger, it also trapped him. It could be said that he destroyed the layout of the apocalypse. The apocalypse created Sargeras's soul from the quantum information state of the dead star, but Adam traced the source and returned Sargeras's consciousness to the origin of the star's consciousness, becoming the fundamental consciousness of the new universe. Although Sargeras didn't lose himself, he also lost the twisted emotions of hatred and anger, becoming the creator of this star field. Now, as long as you guys return alive, our mission will be complete. Luoji comforted him. "Captain, you guys have to be careful," Kong Kenan said worriedly. He was pulled by Yang Qi towards the spatial tunnel leading to Earth, and he shouted at Luoji from the wormhole. Luoji laughed. "Don't worry, Adam's main goal is to reconstruct his body in the evolution of the universe. We're not his main target, but I will do my best to stop him. This universe doesn't need a second apocalypse to appear." I didn't expect someone to know my thoughts so well. Ch'en-Ang's cold voice resounded in this space. "I guessed it when you asked Sargeras to derive the universe with you." Luoji was not startled by Ch'en-Ang's words. Instead, he maintained his initial calmness. "Your main target must be Sargeras. You can't destroy him, so you borrowed our hand to make him fill up the point mass of the universe. At the same time, you used the evolution of the universe to create matter to reconstruct your own body and break the shackles the ancient snake gave you. If you know so much, why do you still want me to take the blame for apocalypse?" Ch'en-Ang's voice was slightly unfriendly. Luoji didn't seem to care. "Because we have a hypothesis. You will never be able to escape the control of apocalypse. So, you can only be set as a part of the apocalypse. In fact, you are also powerless to resist the will of the apocalypse, right? You don't understand us. Do you think Apocalypse and I care? Does he care about your resistance to deprive me of my sense of self? Will he deprive me of my past, which is my free will, because of the agitation of a bunch of lab rats? Then what did the ancient snake say?" Luoji questioned. Ch'en-Ang was furious. "The ancient snake asked for it. As long as I don't want to, Apocalypse will never deprive me of my sense of self. The so-called plot of Apocalypse to control me is just a joke. Even the professors won't take it seriously. Of course, the future corruption does exist. If I had the same memories as Apocalypse and released the shackles of myself, I would indeed become one with him. But the point is, this is my own choice. Why do you humans in this timeline all have persecutory delusions?" Ch'en-Ang was very helpless. "Who do you think caused this?" Luo Ji said angrily. My goal doesn't conflict with yours. Apocalypse hopes that you can break free from his control and ascend to a higher dimension before this world descends, elevating your civilization to the same level as him, becoming a mirror for him to advance, a life-bound artifact. And I want to explore a different timeline, to become an independent future relative to Apocalypse. I want my future to be different from Apocalypse. And you want to continue your civilization, inherit the will of the past, and create a new glory. Our goals are the same. It's just that Apocalypse wants to use pressure to force you forward, to destroy those fallen timelines, to destroy those possibilities that he doesn't need, to achieve a miracle that transcends his control. This process will be a battle to the death. But I'm your fucking ally. I want to surpass the control of Apocalypse, to become another Chenong, to be an independent timeline. You're even attacking your own allies? You've gone too far, don't you know that? Chen Ong said angrily. Luo Ji didn't believe it, but he calmly watched as Chen Ang's fury shook the entire embryonic profound universe. Ignore everything else. Chen Ong raised the entire universe and roared, I'm going to crush all of you today. At this time, the mysterious universe's time scale was -10 to the power of -5 seconds. The temperature of the universe had reached 10 trillion Kelvin, and protons and neutrons were formed. The entire boiling sea of matter was smashed down by Chen Ong. The spatial barrier was easily torn apart like a piece of paper. The spatial bubble that formed Luo Ji's shining dragon body was violently compressed. Whether it was the material of the visible universe or the deeper dark universe and dark matter, they were all evaporated by this boiling sea of matter. Luo Ji fled for his life with the shattered spatial descendant, while fantasy vision stood in the middle. The boiling ocean of materials poured down from the top of the illusion. The terrifying temperature of 10 trillion Kelvin twisted the radiation area tens of thousands of light-years away from the Earth. Everything hundreds of light-years away from the Earth on the other side of the Badner planet was boiling. Huan Li's body was evaporated by this terrifying temperature, but Chen Ang's expression became even more solemn. Digitalized humans don't have physical bodies at all. Rather than calling the physical bodies of electrons matter, it's more like probability. That's just the point where their probability is the highest. I destroyed the probability of his body, but I only helped him spread the probability cloud. Chen Ong felt the powerful psychic power that the mind gem gave Huan Li spread infinitely through the universe, and his expression became extremely ugly. The so-called Huan Li is just the highest probability of Huan Li's existence. Because the mind gem can't be destroyed, there's no such thing as non-existence. Since I destroyed the probability of his body, the probability cloud of other situations will collapse and increase. The surrounding temperature of 1 billion Kelvin is enough to wipe out the probability of Huan Li's other forms. Chen Ong felt the probability cloud of Huan Li expanding infinitely. Previously, the probability of Huan Li standing in front of Chen Ong was infinitely close to 100%, and the probability cloud of his existence encompassing the entire star field was infinitely close to 0. But now, Chen Ong could feel that the probability of Huan Li's existence at any point was increasing. He was everywhere, and in the end, because of the collapse of the infinite probability cloud, he would resurrect in a new form. Chapter 3:18. The time scale of the mysterious universe was 0.0001 seconds, and the temperature was tens of trillions of degrees Celsius. The universe was like a turbulent ocean of earth, water, wind, and fire colliding. Neutrons and protons began to violently collide and evolve, and the fluctuating energy tides in the vacuum produced endless photons, illuminating the entire universe. Chen Ong held the embryonic form of the mysterious universe and pressed it inch by inch against the area covered by the illusion's probability cloud. The temperature of the embryonic form of the universe was higher than the threshold temperature of hadrons and leptons. The collision of photons produced positive and negative hadrons and positive and negative leptons. At the same time, some of them were annihilated into photons. When the equilibrium state was reached, the total number of particles was roughly equal to the total number of photons. The hadrons that had not been annihilated were broken into quarks, and the quarks were in a state of progressive freedom without any protective effect. The particles in the mysterious universe were positive and negative quarks, positive and negative electrons, and positive and negative neutrinos. In the end, only 1 in a billion positive particles remained. The illusion had already covered the entire embryonic form of the universe with its own probability cloud. In the boiling sea of photons, electrons had broken through the inherent nature of plus, forming a huge circulatory system in the void. The essence of the model infinity stone had constructed a materialized structure that reflected the concept of the essence of electrons. Energy circulation, material circulation, information circulation, and even the soul system. With the technological assistance of the Republic, the illusion had reconstructed a body that included all the free electrons in the embryonic form of the mysterious universe. The huge energy circulation even had the phenomenon of changing the foundation of the mysterious universe. This was the most comprehensive confrontation between Chun-Ong and the illusion. It was a competition of their ultimate wisdom, ability, willpower, and strength. Even though Chun-Ong had Apocalypse as a template, the illusion also had the support of the Republic. This opportunity has finally come. In the Republic's Builder Tree research base, which was located in a different dimension, the Soul Gem, which was closely connected to the Soul Gem, continuously transmitted the illusion's consciousness and data back to the Republic. The massive amount of data was reduced to a lower dimension here, and was sent into the reduced dimensions of the information world formed by the consciousness of the Republic soldiers. Using the Infinity Gem, a connection device unique to this universe, we have achieved the parallel world symbiotic technology on the timeline, allowing our warriors to fuse their minds with their counterparts in parallel world. For that, we have overcome many scientific obstacles that could be considered natural barriers. More than 10,000 scientists and researchers sacrificed themselves. They turned their souls into low-dimensional ones and achieved omniscient power that covered low-dimensional world. This allowed us to use their souls as a bridge to control those low-dimensional worlds and build a spiritual brain. In those worlds where time is accelerated and laws are simulated, we can achieve scientific breakthroughs. And because of this, they lost their sense of self, their consciousness sinking into deification. This is just to give us a chance to understand the intentions and plans of the Apocalypse, and a chance to bridge the information gap between us and him. Finally, on the basis of our fusion of parallel universes, our civilization has expanded from a one-dimensional civilization to a multi-dimensional civilization that covers timelines and all parallel universes in this universe. We have fused all the timelines and universes that have been destroyed by the Apocalypse and are about to be destroyed by the Apocalypse. We have included all the Chinese civilization that resisted the Apocalypse. At this very moment, we have innumerable parallel universes working together for this goal. Most of them, or even all of them, could be destroyed, but as long as the Chinese civilization of one timeline could achieve that miracle, we would have succeeded. Everyone here, except for the dimensional warriors who have descended through projections, has fused with different selves from different parallel universes. In those universes, some of you are warriors, some of you are researchers, and some of you may just be ordinary people. You all have different memories, different lives. We have all become monsters. Every one of us carries countless selves from different universes. Now, our memories are complex, our emotions are suppressed, and we are omniscient and omnipotent. You have fused with the knowledge of those universes, and each of you has wisdom that covers all parallel universes. We have given up on ourselves, allowing the most resolute and stubborn spacetime personalities to gather and replace the stupid, cowardly, ignorant, and lazy parts of our personalities. We have become the collection of the most resolute and perfect parts of countless selves in parallel universes. For this, we have abandoned too much. We've lost love because we can't bear the warm emotions and memories of every time and space, the feelings of those who love us and those we love. That selfish love will be chaotic because the object of each world is different. That will only make our consciousness mixed up. The precious emotions we have accumulated in countless universes, our love and beliefs, will be forgotten for the sake of a single goal. This is the most painful thing in the world. We can deeply remember hatred, but we are unable to carry our most precious memories and emotions. Therefore, we can only entrust this emotion to everyone, to our civilization. We love everyone in this civilization because everyone may be the person we love the most in the parallel universes. We will spread the selfish love that we cannot carry in our parallel universes to everyone. Love others like love me. Everyone present lowered their heads and felt the pain in their hearts. It was the result of every personality forgetting and giving up their most precious memories and common sincere emotions. In the information exchange center of the laboratory, the soul gem blossomed with brilliant light. The researcher of the Republic of Will, who stood at the center, placed his hand on the gem. The firmest and most precious subconscious sea in the hearts of all the members of the Republic of Will of China was connected to the soul gem. Only a soul gem could completely carry the Araya consciousness of an entire civilization. The researchers of the Republic of China had long discovered that there was a soul that called itself Goddess of Vengeance, hidden inside. Although she did not have a self, the huge soul quality proved that the soul gem had this ability. After extracting Goddess of Vengeance's soul and using it as a test subject, this gem became a part of the plan. Hallucination Program, get ready! In the embryonic form of the mystic universe, Hallucination's consciousness program suddenly released a deeper part. A huge, orderly, and perfect AI program connected to the Builder Tree Laboratory through the Soul Gem. The perfect program was like a huge container that could be loaded with a huge amount of consciousness data at any time. Hallucination's body had long since fused with the embryonic form of the mystic universe, but after the program was activated, the huge cycle composed of all electrons was loaded deeper into the embryonic form of the mystic universe. Chen Ong suddenly found that his consciousness was also attracted by the embryonic form of the mystic universe and entered it. Hallucination program loaded successfully. Adam's beacon has been returned, loading Will of China. In the Builder Tree Laboratory, the soul gem suddenly collapsed and turned into a purple stream of light. It entered the mystic universe and fused with the yellow light of the soul gem. Loading external program. Ultimate System Reality Program loading. Power Program loading. Space Program loading. Time Program loading. The light of 6 infinity gems blossomed in the embryonic form of the mystic universe. With the infinity gems as the material carrier, a system that carried the will of China was completed. Locking onto Adam's beacon in the Builder Tree Laboratory, the person in charge of the experiment smiled and explained to his subordinates, "The apocalypse retracts the timeline and destroys all possibilities it doesn't need." After countless tests by the Republic of Parallel Worlds, they finally confirmed that only by breaking through this dimension and achieving dimensional ascension will we be able to survive this experiment. However, dimensional ascension is so difficult that even the apocalypse couldn't find a direction. Our efforts were at a stalemate, but we quickly thought of a solution. In our world, there exists a part of a higher dimensional existence. The apocalypse. The apocalypse itself is a low-dimensional part of the higher dimensional existence. It's very simple to break through the limits of the dimension. All we have to do is become a part of the apocalypse, but the Republic will never allow us to become a part of the apocalypse. We'd rather be destroyed, someone asked doubtfully. Then let some existences with the same nature as the apocalypse, such as his past, become a part of us. The professor has experimented. Through Adam, the parallel bodies we created with the apocalypse can connect to other dimensional worlds, which is a part of the higher dimensional existence in other worlds. By the same principle, by tracing back Adam's soul, we can let him go to other worlds and leave this cage. The price is to become a part of Adam. Of course, the Republic's pride won't allow us to give up on ourselves. The Republic can't, but our will, including our civilization, can. We will let our civilization be reborn in another world. With Adam's soul as the core, the will of China as the corridor of the soul, and the ultimate system as the outermost layer of protection, we will launch Adam to other worlds. As long as he reaches a world that carries the Chinese civilization and exists in the Republic, the ultimate system and will of China will merge into the collective sea of consciousness of the Chinese civilization in that time and space, reshaping our civilization. We can die and our existence can be destroyed, but not the Chinese civilization. We can't allow the development of the Chinese civilization. This is the Civilization Tinder Project. Tens of thousands of parallel worlds are willing to become a torch, burning everything we have, just for a chance to spread the light of our civilization to other worlds, to achieve dimensional ascension, and to pass on the tinder of our civilization. Now let's burn. Let us fight the apocalypse in this universe. Whether we live or die, the fire of our civilization will be passed on forever. Now we can sacrifice everything. Let's finish this experiment with the apocalypse. In the embryonic form of the mysterious universe, Chen Ong suddenly came into contact with the Great Will at the core. His consciousness connected with all the members of the Republic, and he understood everything. So that's how it is. The illusion program protected Will of China, forming a soul corridor outside Adam Chen Ang's soul. Chen Ong gave up on defense and accepted it as a part of his soul. The ultimate system and the infinity stone wrapped around Chen Ang's soul, forming another layer of defense. The embryonic form of the mysterious universe acted as the outermost layer of defense, wrapping around the ultimate system. In the end, the task of rebuilding the Republic actually fell to me. Will I bring the Republic back from the future and destroy my future apocalypse? That sounds pretty cool. However, as long as I leave this sealed dimensional universe and turn the possibility of the Republic's continuation into an inevitability, then there will definitely be a timeline in which the Republic exists in the future. In other words, I don't have to do anything. As long as I bring hope out, it will germinate, grow, and eventually become a towering tree that will bear the bright fruits of civilization. Then, when I return, I will definitely be able to witness the future of the Republic cross time and space to fight the apocalypse until the end of this universe. The Jianmu base in countless parallel worlds erupted with the most powerful psychic fluctuations. The ultimate psychic weapon appeared, breaking the barrier between reality and illusion. Chen Ang's consciousness began to backtrack, searching for himself in the parallel world. He turned into a stream of light and disappeared from this dimension with the embryonic form of the mysterious universe. To be continued. Chapter 319. Inside Chong An's imperial city, the palace was grand and majestic. Between the pavilions and courtyards, there were winding corridors and richly ornamented rafters. It was indescribably magnificent. In this vast world, only the residence of the emperor could have such a grand view. Although it was already night time, there were whale candles everywhere in the palace, illuminating the place brightly. Yang Guang stood on a high platform and looked down at the magnificent palace. Behind him, a tall man knelt on the ground. He was trembling and didn't dare to look at Yang Guang. The surrounding guards stared at the empty space in front of them as if they didn't see the man at all. Only a few highly skilled guards hid in the shadows near Yang Guang and stared at the man's every move. Yuan Wenji was an expert of the current great sway. His mysterious ice force, which was passed down in his family, had been tempered to perfection. Although he was not as good as Yuan Shu, the current head of the Yuan family, but because he was young and vigorous, his lethality was superior. If he suddenly went berserk, it was hard to say whether or not he could hold Yang Guang hostage. Therefore, they had to be careful. If Yang Guang didn't call Yuanji over, they wouldn't even allow him to get close. Yuanqing, you said that the art of longevity that you found for me was taken away by the Rakshasa from Goryeo? Now it's in the hands of two Yangzhou hooligans? Yang Guang's voice didn't sound happy or angry. His back was facing Yuanji, so the expression on his face couldn't be seen. Yuanhua had no choice but to put on a trembling expression as he replied, "Reporting to your Majesty, we came one step too late. Luocha's daughter snatched the secret of longevity from Shilong's hand in advance, but we killed him with our palms. However, at that time, both of us were injured. The two hooligans that she adopted took the opportunity to take away the art of longevity and the corpse of the Rakshasa." Humph! Yang Guang flicked his sleeves and asked, "Trash, you can't even take down an injured Rakshasa. Yuanji, do you know that you're secretly hiding the Rakshasa and plotting to steal the treasures of that traitor Yang Su and my art of longevity? Your Majesty, these are all ridiculous words. We can't believe them." Yuanhua buried his head on the ground and explained in a terrified tone. Seeing that Yang Guang was about to get angry, he quickly took out the things that he had prepared. Originally, with the power of the Yuan family, he did not have to be so timid. But now that the world was in chaos and the people were angry, everyone knew that this was the best time to fulfill his ambition. The more it was like this, the more careful he had to be. If it was the Yang Guang from before, he would not have been so afraid. However, it was because Yang Guang wanted to make them lose their minds that they had to be even more careful. Otherwise, Yang Guang might even dare to force the Yuan family to rebel. Your Majesty, although I was unable to retrieve the secret of longevity for your Majesty, I did find a rare object that has a lot to do with the secret of longevity. Yuan Huaji's words seemed to have piqued Yang Guang's interest. Rumor has it that the secret of longevity was created by the sage Guang Qingzi. It was written in strange characters and its meaning was close to the ancient times. It was difficult for modern people to understand its meaning. Therefore, it was said that no one in the world could live forever. However, I asked around and heard a strange story. It was said that when Guang Qingzi was teaching the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan, he got a flying stone from outer space. He saw the technique of the extraterrestrial demon in the stone and created the secret of longevity. I thought about it. Since the ancient times, the meaning of the characters has changed, but the strange stone has never changed. If your Majesty could see the secret of longevity with this stone, wouldn't it be like adding wings to a tiger? Therefore I asked around. Finally, I found this stone in a library and presented it to your Majesty. Yuan Huaji pointed at the bottom of the stage, where his guards were. Hearing this, Yang Guang's mind was slightly shaken. It seemed that this strange stone had some kind of magic that he could not let go of. He pondered and said, could it be the legendary heavenly demonic stone that Guang Qingzi used to see the primeval demon's bone? Rumor has it that Nuwa mended the sky and fought with the primeval demon above the 9 heavens. The primeval demon died in 10 days and his bone turned into a strange stone? The more he waited, the more restless he was. It was as if he could not suppress something. The words primeval demon were like a curse that firmly affected his heart. Therefore, he did not pay any more attention to Yuan Huaji and hurriedly returned to his bedroom with the heavenly demonic stone. Yuan Huaji only raised his head after Yang Guang left. He and his guards left the palace and returned to the direction where Yang Guang had left. Yuan Huaji's lips curled into a cold smile and he snorted in his heart, this fatuous ruler is really stupid. He is so obsessed with seeking immortality that he is even superstitious about demons and ghosts. Primeval demon? I wonder how it is related to the demon sect? He turned his head and shouted to the guards who were waiting for him, "Let's go!" Then, he left the palace. In a secret place in the bedchamber, Yang Guang caressed the strange stone in front of him. It was deep and dark. When light shone on it, it was as if it was penetrating into ink. There was no reflection at all. Yang Guang felt that it was like a black hole that devoured everything around it. There was a mysterious spiritual force that seemed to be faintly connected to him. The moment his hand touched the black stone, Yang Guang's body trembled. An indescribable feeling came from the bottom of his heart. It was as if his spiritual acupoint had been opened. The vital energy in his body was stirring, and a strange spirituality was born in his vital energy. Once again, he probed it with his vital energy. He felt that the black stone was nurturing a universe. It was mysterious, sublimated, and the indescribable spirituality made Yang Guang's vital energy jump and spin around the strange stone. It was as if there were acupoints and meridians in it, and it was circulating at a normal speed. A thin white vital energy could be seen coming out from Yang Guang's nose and into the non-existent acupoints of the black stone. It was as if a brilliance was being nurtured inside. The black stone turned and spat out a thick and strange vital energy that went into Yang Guang's 7 orifices. In a trance, Yang Guang saw a giant demon that was as majestic as all living beings. It was as big as a star and was covered in dark gold. There was endless time and space around it, and it held the sun and the moon in its palm. Primeval demon, Yang Guang said with a trembling voice. The primeval demon Dharmakaya was switching back and forth between a giant star and a giant god. Yang Guang tried his best to see the heavenly demon reaching out its hand towards a planet that was filled with life. Endless time and space suddenly gushed out and went into the acupoints of the planet. In an instant, it brought along a large amount of soil, rocks, and lava into the heavenly demon's hand. The planet visibly shriveled. Its flesh, bones, and even its soul seemed to have been devoured by the primordial heavenly demon in one move. The illusion changed again. Yang Guang saw a young man who looked very similar to him when he was young, floating in the vast galaxy. He suddenly turned his head and his eyes seemed to meet with Yang Guang's. A large amount of information, memories, and insights rushed into Yang Guang's brain. Ah! Yang Guang felt a sharp pain in his head and suddenly woke up from the illusion. Chenong! No, it's the primeval demon. I'm the reincarnation of the primeval demon. Yang Guang shouted in shock. He seemed to have found the answer to the matter and the reason why he could faintly sense the heavenly demonic stone. He immediately became furious. Nuwa, you bitch! How dare you kill me? How dare you kill me? No, I want to be reborn. I want the primeval demon to be reborn. The eunuch beside him was so scared that he was at a loss and wanted to escape. Yang Qi raised his hand in anger. You want to betray me? The eunuch felt a bone-piercing vital energy enveloping him. He was so scared that he knelt on the ground and cried, Your Majesty, I dare not! Your Majesty! He looked at Yang Guang and the murderous intent in his eyes grew. He screamed and wanted to push the door open to escape. Yang Guang laughed. He could feel his vital energy absorbing the life of the eunuch. The eunuch's flesh and blood left his body and was sucked dry by the vital energy in midair. Then, the bones and the marrow of the soul. As Yang Guang's vital energy grew stronger outside his body, a warm feeling enveloped him. It was as if his life was being nourished and his strength was being elevated. When the eunuch's head turned into ashes in midair, Yang Guang felt his body being reborn. A brand new life force came from his vital energy, giving him a new lease of life. His vital energy had grown by 2 levels, but the quality was many times purer. Looking at his white hair that had returned to a healthy black color, the wrinkles on his hands faded, and the youth and energy in his body, Yang Qi laughed. He accepted the conjecture that he was the reincarnation of the Sky Demon without hesitation and devoted himself to the great cause of the Sky Demon's rebirth. So I am the Sky Demon. That's great. Longevity, power. I am Yangguang, but I will be reborn as the Sky Demon Chenong. I will return from the ancient times and rule the earth again. Ah! Yang Guang regarded Sarjara's illusion as Chun Eng's real body and was ecstatic about his newfound power. The first ray of dawn shone on the palace gate. The palace gate that had been closed for the whole night suddenly opened. Yang Guang looked at the eunuch chief kneeling in front of him, then turned back to look at the empty palace behind him. He glanced at the eyes of the guards around him and saw that they didn't dare to look at him directly. He saw that they didn't dare to doubt that he had suddenly regained his 20-year-old appearance. Yang Guang chuckled softly. "Take me to the death row," he ordered the chief. Chapter 320. Heroes used martial arts to break the law. Who knew how many Jianghu people with martial arts were imprisoned in the imperial prison in the capital? Although the so-called masters in Jianghu mostly relied on the major powers, in terms of power in the world, the laws were strict, and who could surpass the imperial court? These people were all living treasures in Yang Guang's eyes. Not only were these experts full of vigor and vitality, but their life force was also purer. Furthermore, they were able to greatly enhance Yang Guang's skill, which could absorb humans' flesh and blood, as well as his genuine qi and skill, to improve by leaps and bounds. If it were not for Yang Guang's suppression, the pure Sky Demon genuine qi would have long transformed his physical body, giving birth to all kinds of evil and supernatural abilities, allowing his middle-aged appearance to be reborn. Because the progress of this evil technique was too fast, Yang Guang had to restrain himself to prevent the demonic nature in his qi from overflowing and turning him into a demon who only knew how to kill. I am the primordial Sky Demon, the demon among the demons, the leader of all demons. How can I be confused by a little demon from the outside and cause the demonic technique to backfire? Yang Guang looked angrily at the uncontrollable demonic qi on his hands. The white bear blanket under him was already full of holes and was corroded by the demonic qi. Yang Guang casually tore off the tattered dragon robe on his body, revealing his strong muscles. Now, he didn't look like he was addicted to alcohol and women. He felt that he was even stronger than when he was at his strongest. He was almost standing at the peak of the human body, but the more it was like this, the more Yang Guang was dissatisfied. Isn't my primordial Sky Demon true body much better than these mortal bodies? Perfect, powerful, and powerful. My demonic body has been tempered thousands of times, and I have an endless lifespan. I hate those traitors who forced me to be trapped in this mortal body. Song Ke, Li Clan, Yuan Clan, and that small Tiadang village. Under Yang Guang's rage, the demonic qi that leaked out caused the entire death cell to be shrouded in a brutal and terrifying aura. It was as if a ferocious beast had awakened from its slumber billions of years ago. Even though this was the deepest part of the death cell, where a group of powerful and cruel experts were imprisoned, they could only tremble in fear under this murderous aura. The few guards standing behind Yang Guang acted as if they had met a species that was naturally superior to them. They could not help but submit to Yang Guang. Their minds were restless and their eyes were bloodshot. A tyrannical true qi and devil qi filled their bodies, tempering them even more. Every muscle and bone was withstanding the impact of this tyrannical true qi, and then being nourished by the devil qi, they recovered. In this process, they consumed their life force, but it made them even more tyrannical. The demonic true qi of the guards was stimulated by Yang Guang's overflowing demonic qi, and under this qi, it grew crazily, squeezing out their life potential. In a short moment, these guards seemed to have aged 10 years, but the muscles and bones in their bodies were as if they were made of fine steel, and their skinny bodies were extremely powerful. Just as they were about to be unable to withstand this transformation and turn into mindless, bloodthirsty, and violent demons, Yang Guang finally got rid of his demonic nature and woke up from his anger. With 2 claws, he tore open the bars made of fine steel, and pulled out a few death row prisoners from a cell. Yang Guang stretched out his hand and sucking them into dregs. The life force contained in the devil chi was lively and powerful, and it drilled into the 7 apertures of the guards, filling up their skinny bodies in the blink of an eye. The guards felt that not only had their life force recovered, but they had also become stronger, and even their bodies had become a few years younger. "We pledge our loyalty to your majesty the Devil Lord." Several guards knelt behind Yang Guang. They were fanatical, and their obsession to be loyal to Yang Guang built a bridge between them and Yang Guang through the devil chi, allowing Yang Guang to completely control them at any time. The special ability of the heavenly demonic power is really terrifying. If it wasn't for the fact that I need to devour a large amount of flesh and blood to control you and absorb living people, I could develop a demon army in an instant. However, I have already improved this method. In the future, as long as I have a devil seed made of devil chi, I can let you cultivate the true demonic power that I created and become my dependent. This method can also guarantee your potential. Under the shroud of my heavenly demonic power aura, you will become my limbs, sucking blood, essence, and inner energy, just like the arrival of the heavenly demonic army. In the midst of his complacency, Yang Guang suddenly came to his senses and regained his usual calmness. He casually waved his hand, and the heavenly demonic real chi transformed into a black cloth, wrapping around his naked body. Recalling all the times when he lost control, Yang Guang could not help but frown. It was not that he did not know the reason behind it. The memory left by the primordial heavenly demon in his mind told him that this was the reason why his will could not control the devil chi. The human will, thoughts, and spiritual realm were too shallow, and it was impossible to control the power of the primordial heavenly demon. His mind would be affected by the devil chi, and it would become stronger under the amplification of the devil chi. Greed would reach its peak, and anger would reach its peak. Under the stimulation of the devil technique, it was like adding fuel to the fire. It would only become stronger and stronger, and in turn, affect his rationality. It seems that the emotions and memories of the identity of Yang Guang have become an obstacle for me. That's right, it's just the reincarnation of my mortal body. How can it bear the power that I used to tear the sky and the vault of heaven? Those fearless emotions and ego will only make me weak and have flaws, and I will not be able to truly reach the realm of the primordial heavenly demon. Only by erasing my past emotions, twisting my past ego, and recalling my memories before my reincarnation, I will immerse myself in it, and slowly remove my current unnecessary thoughts. Only by carrying my past memories and ego can I truly control this power. When I control the world and no longer need this mortal body, I will sacrifice this mortal body in front of my past skeleton, so that I can truly be reborn. Yang Guang recalled the lifelike image of the young man in his divine sense. It seemed that the essence of the primordial heavenly demon in his body was urging him to erase everything that was Yang Guang, emotions, personality, and all the elements that made up his self. It would turn into a blank body, and then replicate the memory and personality of the primordial heavenly demon. At that time, his body had already been transformed by the heavenly demonic power, and his soul had been erased by himself. Who was it that came back to life? Of course, Yang Guang himself could not think in this direction. The one that controlled his thoughts was no longer the original him, but the personality that was reconstructed by the primordial heavenly demon. It was only for the sake of the existence of Yang Guang and the identity of the primordial heavenly demon. And now, whether it was the primordial heavenly demon, a vast, mysterious, and huge system consciousness, or even Yang Guang's ego, they were all urging him to do the same thing. Clear the universe, kill the disobedient, and truly unify the world. To be continued. Chapter 321. Eunuch Wei gently pushed open the side door of the bedroom and lit the eternal lamp in the room with the red candle in his hand. His movements were very light, and his hands and feet were very nimble. His face carried the special respect and restraint of an inner attendant, and he looked like an old eunuch who was lighting the lamps in the palace. Only the exquisite silk on his body could show that he was the most skilled and most trusted inner attendant by Yang Guang's side. There were not many people in the palace. Everyone knew that ever since Yu Wenji brought the strange stone to the emperor, Yang Guang had been immersed in meditation and cultivation. His temper had also become much more violent, and he would kill at the slightest provocation. No one dared to come within 30 steps of Yang Guang when he was cultivating. Even the people who were in charge of routine service were removed by Yang Guang. There was not a trace of noise in the huge palace. Eunuch Wei saw the 2 inner attendants standing guard at the door, and an undetectable trace of fear flashed across his eyes. This old eunuch, whose identity was Yang Jian and Yang Guang on the surface, was actually an undercover elder of the Dark Sunflower sect. He was an old eunuch with high authority in the palace. How could he not see how dangerous these 2 inner attendants were? They did not seem to be alive. They had no emotions, and their eyes were only cold rationality and loyalty to Yang Guang. The sudden appearance of these 2 people made Eunuch Wei feel very uneasy. With his sharp senses, it was difficult to detect the 2's life activities. In his perception, they were like the 2 statues in the room, completely lifeless. Although Eunuch Wei's heart was secretly moving, the red candle was still steady in his hand. No one could tell what he was thinking on the surface. There was a soft sound, and someone walked out of the room. Eunuch Wei hurriedly put down the red candle and bowed to the ground. Eunuch Wei, no need to be so courteous. Get up. Yang Guang's voice was still calm. But only Eunuch Wei could hear that the emotion in his voice was getting less and less. It was completely different from the domineering tone of the past, and also different from the gloomy coldness recently. That was a figure without a trace of emotion, revealing a bone-chilling coldness. Yes. Eunuch Wei obediently got up from the ground. Lianxiang, you have been following me for 12 years. Wei Gonggong obediently replied. Yes, Nubi started to serve His Majesty in the 4th year of Rinshou. This year is exactly the 12th year. In today's world, bandits are everywhere, and the flames of war are everywhere. It makes me feel like this is the end of the dynasty. The bandits in the world also see it as an opportunity to fight for supremacy. Yang Guang sighed. I told you before that I want to temporarily avoid Jiangdu, right? Wei Gonggong hastily kowtowed and said, This is not His Majesty's fault. It is the result of aristocratic families and influential families running amok and violating the law, exploiting the people to the extreme. His Majesty's temporary retreat to Jiangdu is a great plan to stabilize Jiangnan and sweep away all the ugliness with a thunderous strike to revive the great sway. I don't want to go any more, Yang Guang said indifferently. Wei Gonggong raised his head in fright, then bowed his head and said, This matter does not allow Nubi to comment. Yang Guang opened his right hand and looked at the faint demonic qi in his palm. He said softly, Now I have a new choice. I don't have to endure those stupid insects and clowns anymore. I can even build a 300 feet tall city wall in Luoyang. Why can't I build a canal? The Jingyan Zen sect has hundreds of palaces and 500 bronze arhat. They can even afford a bronze palace. Do you think the world will be in chaos just by building a few palaces for me? 3 expeditions to Goryeo. Don't they know that this is the Great Sway's hidden danger? When I went to Goryeo, who was the one who lit a fire in my backyard? Who was the one who did this to me? Aristocratic families, martial sects, and Taoist and Buddhist sects. In this world, aristocratic families, roving bandits, gangs, Taoist and Buddhist sects, righteous and evil, black and white, all of them look down on the imperial court. Those who buy illicit salt, those who trade in human beings, those who sell horses and weapons, ha 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 ha. They really dare to reach for anything and even dare to put sh*t on my head. I am rich and have conquered the world, yet I still need to trade in human beings from gangs? Yang Guang sneered and said, "Who needs human beings?" Of the 4 aristocratic families, the Song family is the Jiangnan warlord. Yuan and Dugu are also a threat. There is also the Li family that is far away in Taiyuan, guarding an important place in Guangzhou. I am happy to hear about the aristocratic families in Guangzhou. Eunuch Wei bowed his head again and said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. I am too happy." Yang Guang laughed heartily and said with great interest, "The Great Sway is not upright. There are many aristocratic families in the imperial court, and the aristocratic families monopolize power, making it difficult for my orders to leave Chang'an. If they are obedient, I cannot do anything to them for now, but now that the world is in chaos, I can finally use the butcher's knife and wash the world with blood. Kill them all, cleanly." Yang Guang laughed sinisterly. Wei Lianxiang suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness, like a fierce beast awakening from its slumber. He looked at Yang Guang, who suddenly grew taller, as if the surroundings were filled with blood-light. He was obviously an incapable emperor at the end of his road, but he actually gave him a feeling that he was going to whip the world. The world belonged to the aristocratic families. The hearts of the people were against them, and the power, strength, and influence were all controlled by the aristocratic families. Even the emperor of the Great Sway was only ruling the world on behalf of the aristocratic families. Even though he was not a puppet, he still had to weigh the pros and cons carefully. The reason why the Great Sway was believed by all the forces in the world to exist only in name was because Yang Guang had lost the support of all the aristocratic families. The new imperial examinations, the suppression of the aristocratic families, all of these were roads to death. But now, Yang Guang actually wanted to butcher the aristocratic families. Wei Lianxiang logically believed that Yang Guang was courting death, but under this terrifying demonic might, he did not dare to underestimate him. Right now, he only wanted to quickly pass this shocking change to Dark Sunflower Sect's Empressine. He did not know what Yang Guang's madness would bring to Dark Sunflower Sect, but he knew that if Zhu Yuyan did not know about this, then there would be great trouble. Just as Eunuch Wei was in a daze, Yang Guang suddenly turned his head and asked, "Did you know that Pei Zhu is Shi Zhishuan?" Wei Lianxiang was already intimidated by Yang Guang's imposing manner, and when he heard this news, he was so shocked that he trembled, and the red candle in his hand fell to the ground. He cried out in surprise, "Evil King is Pei Zhu. Yes. He even took my nephew as his disciple, the orphan of the dethroned crown prince, Yang Yong." "Ha ha," Yang Guang said with a smile. Wei Lianxiang was so scared that he prostrated on the ground. After he regained his composure, his mind started to spin rapidly. He did not know whether his identity had been exposed, but since Yang Guang knew Pei Zhu's identity, it was not strange for him to know that he was an elder of Dark Sunflower Sect. He slowly raised his true qi, and 2 wisps of green light stuck to his fingertips, as if they were alive. "I heard that you met Xiang Yutian when you were young. What kind of person is he?" Yang Guang's words caused Wei Lianxiang to be unable to hold himself back any longer. He shot up from the ground, and a wisp of green light was hidden between his index fingernails. His body twisted into a strange angle, and he stabbed at Yang Guang's chest from an impossible angle. The true qi in his entire body released a tempting sharpness. But before he could touch Yang Guang's ordinary clothes, he saw a wisp of flowing light suddenly appear. To be continued.